Hey guys, welcome back to my new channel. Today we will see what if Harry Potter story. If you like the video, please leave like, share and comment and share with your friend. Now let's start the video.
Chapter 1. The prison of thought. The cupboard under the stairs smelled like dust and old shoes, same as always. Harry Potter lay on his thin mattress with his eyes closed, but he wasn't sleeping. He hadn't really slept, not the way normal people did, since he was 2 years old. Inside his mind, he was working. The fortress rose from an endless black plain, its walls carved from something that looked like obsidian but felt like will. Harry had built it stone by stone over 9 years, learning through trial and error, through screaming nights and bleeding noses and headaches that felt like his skull was splitting open. Now it stood tall and proud, a monument to stubbornness and spite. And deep in its heart, in a cell that grew smaller every year, something raged. "Let me out, you wretched child," Harry ignored the voice. He'd gotten good at that. He walked the perimeter of the innermost prison, checking the walls for cracks. The anniversary was coming, tomorrow, actually, his 11th birthday, and the thing inside always got stronger around this time. Something about the date. Something about the magic that had bound them together in the first place. The cell was barely larger than his cupboard now. He remembered when it had been the size of a cathedral, when the dark presence inside had seemed infinite and overwhelming, when he'd been a terrified toddler fighting something that wanted to devour him from the inside out. Those days were over. "You think your little cage can hold me forever? I am Lord Voldemort. I have conquered death itself, and you're nothing but you're a piece of someone who conquered death," Harry said calmly, his mental voice echoing through the fortress. "A fragment. A leftover. And you've been my prisoner for 9 years. I'd have thought you'd learned some humility by now." The rage that slammed against the walls was almost physical. Harry felt it as pressure behind his eyes, a spike of pain through his scar. But the walls held. They always held. He finished his inspection and turned his attention to the other reason he came here every night, the archives. They lined the walls of the fortress's outer rings, thousands upon thousands of glowing threads, each one a memory he'd extracted from his prisoner over the years. It had taken him until age 5 to figure out he could do it, until age 7 to do it reliably, until age 9 to do it without the soul fragment realizing what was happening until too late. Now he had decades of the Dark Lord's knowledge at his fingertips. Spells. Rituals. History. Names. Secrets. Tonight, he was looking for something specific. He found the thread he wanted and pulled it gently, letting the memory wash over him. A younger Tom Riddle, handsome, charming, already rotten inside, standing in an office he recognized from other extracted memories as belonging to Albus Dumbledore. They were discussing a job application. Defense against the dark arts professor. Harry watched the memory play out, noting every detail. The way Riddle's eyes flickered to objects around the room, cataloging, assessing. The way Dumbledore's twinkled with that grandfatherly warmth that didn't quite reach his calculating gaze. The refusal. The curse. Interesting. So that was why the position was supposedly jinxed. "Stay out of my memories, boy." The prisoner's voice was quieter now, sullen. "You have no right, you tried to kill me when I was a baby," Harry said mildly. "I'd say that gives me certain rights." He filed the memory away and withdrew from the fortress, letting his consciousness float back toward the waking world. There was a specific date in that memory, a year. He could cross-reference it with other things he'd learned, build a better timeline of Tom Riddle's movements before his rise to power. But that was work for another night. Right now, he needed to think about tomorrow. His 11th birthday. The day the letters would come. He already knew about Hogwarts, of course. Hard not to, when you had the memories of someone who'd attended. He knew about the houses, the teachers, or at least, the teachers from 50 years ago, the layout of the castle, the hidden passages. He knew about the Chamber of Secrets and its monster. He knew about magic theory that most adult wizards never learned. What he didn't know was how he was going to play this. The Dursleys would try to stop him from going. That much was obvious from years of living with them, watching them flinch at any mention of the M-word, seeing the fear in Aunt Petunia's eyes whenever something strange happened around him. They knew about magic. They knew about the wizarding world. And they were terrified of it. He could force the issue. He had enough control over his magic now to be dangerous if he wanted to be. A few demonstrations of power, and they'd let him do whatever he wanted. But that would be stupid. It would draw attention. Questions. And Harry had spent 9 years learning that attention was dangerous. No, better to play it the expected way. Let them refuse. Let the wizards handle it. Act surprised, act ignorant, act like a normal child who just discovered magic was real. It would be exhausting, pretending to be someone he wasn't. But he'd been doing it his whole life. What was a little more? Harry opened his eyes. The cupboard was dark. Through the thin walls, he could hear Uncle Vernon snoring, Aunt Petunia's lighter breathing, the occasional grunt from Dudley's room above. The clock in the hallway ticked steadily toward midnight. 11 years old. Officially, anyway. He felt ancient. He slipped out of bed, such as it was, and crept to the cupboard door. It wasn't locked tonight. Sometimes they remembered, sometimes they didn't. It hardly mattered, he'd figured out how to open it from the inside years ago, a little trick of magic that didn't require a wand. The kitchen was silent and silver with moonlight. Harry filled a glass with water and stood at the window, looking out at Privet Drive. Identical houses, identical lawns, identical lives. He'd spent years studying the Dursleys' neighbors, memorizing their routines, understanding the shape of normal suburban existence. It all felt like a costume that didn't quite fit. "What are you brooding about now?" The voice came from inside his head, distant but clear. The prisoner had learned, over the years, that screaming got him nowhere. Sometimes he tried conversation instead. Harry supposed even Dark Lords got lonely. "Tomorrow," Harry said quietly, not bothering to speak aloud. The mental connection went both ways, the prisoner could hear his thoughts if he let him. The letters start coming. Ah. Hogwarts. There was something almost wistful in the soul fragment's tone. "I remember my letter. The moment I knew I wasn't just a freak, that there was a whole world out there that would recognize my greatness. Is that what you felt? I always wondered. Don't pretend we're similar, boy. You had my memories to prepare you. I had nothing but my own genius. And your charming personality." The prisoner's anger flared, but it was distant, muted by the fortress walls. Harry took another sip of water. "Tell me about Dumbledore," he said. "The current Dumbledore, I mean. The memories I have are 50 years old. He'll be older now. More powerful. More manipulative." The prisoner's voice dripped with old hatred. "He saw through me from the beginning, you know. Even when everyone else was fooled, those twinkling eyes were always watching, always judging. He's the most dangerous wizard alive, and he's been planning something for you since the night I fell." "Planning what?" "How should I know? I've been trapped in your skull for 9 years. But I know the old fool. He doesn't do anything without a reason. If he left you with these muggles, it was because it served his purposes." Harry filed that away. He'd long suspected something similar, the blood wards he'd discovered in Voldemort's memories, the protective magic that supposedly came from his mother's sacrifice. It made sense that Dumbledore would leverage it somehow. "The teachers at Hogwarts," he said. "Tell me about Severus Snape." The prisoner's hatred intensified, different from his feelings about Dumbledore. More personal. "Snape. The traitor. He was mine, once, devoted, useful, brilliant with potions and dark magic. Then he turned on me for reasons I never fully understood. He'll hate you on sight, boy. You look too much like your father." "You knew my father?" James Potter. Arrogant, talented, cruel in the casual way that purebloods often are. He and his little friends made Snape's life miserable at school. But more importantly, the prisoner paused, as if weighing whether to share this. Snape loved your mother. Desperately. Pathetically. That's why he turned. She died, and he blamed me. Harry considered this. His mother. He had almost no memories of her, just a flash of red hair, a voice singing something soft, the green light that ended everything. But the prisoner's memories showed her differently: Lily Evans, Muggleborn, brilliant, fierce. Top of her class in charms and potions both. Defiant to the end. She was why your curse rebounded, wasn't she? Her sacrifice. Old magic. Older than wands, older than schools. Love as a weapon. The contempt in the prisoner's voice didn't quite hide something else. Confusion, maybe. Or fear. I still don't fully understand how it worked. How it bound my soul to yours instead of destroying us both. That made two of them. Harry had spent years trying to understand the mechanics of what had happened that night. The best he could piece together was that his mother's protection had disrupted Voldemort's killing curse at the exact moment it intersected with whatever dark magic maintained the Horcruxes. Instead of destroying Harry, the curse had fragmented further, and the piece that lodged in his head had met something unexpected, a mind that could contain it. Natural occlumency, the books called it. An inborn ability to organize and protect one's thoughts. Rare, maybe 1 in 100,000 wizards had it to any meaningful degree. Harry seemed to have it to an unprecedented extent, strong enough that a 2-year-old could instinctively build walls against an invading soul. Or maybe it was something else. Maybe his mother's magic had helped, or the circumstances of the curse's rebounding. He probably would never know for certain. What he did know was that he'd been at war since infancy, and he'd been winning. What will you do when you get there? The prisoner asked. To Hogwarts, I mean. What's your plan? Learn. Watch. Figure out who can be trusted and who can't. No dramatic reveals. No demonstrations of power. I'm 11. I'm supposed to be a normal 11-year-old who just discovered magic exists. That's what I'll be. Boring. But there was respect in the prisoner's voice, grudging and barely acknowledged. The old fool won't be easy to deceive. And Snape is a Legilimens. He'll try to read your mind. Let him try. Harry finished his water and rinsed the glass, placing it back exactly where it had been. No evidence. No traces. He'd learned early that the Dursleys looked for reasons to punish him, and the best defense was leaving them nothing to find. He slipped back to his cupboard and lay down on the thin mattress, staring up at the underside of the stairs. Through the slats, he could see a sliver of the hallway, the first gray hints of approaching dawn. Tomorrow the letters would come. Tomorrow his real life would begin. You're not afraid, the prisoner observed. You should be. The world out there, my followers are still free. Many of them. They'll come for you eventually. I know. Harry had memorized the names years ago, extracted from reluctantly surrendered memories. Malfoy. Lestrange. Nott. Crabbe. Goyle. Dozens of others who'd escaped justice by claiming the Imperious Curse, who'd gone back to their comfortable lives while their master rotted in Harry's head. I'm counting on it. What does that mean? But Harry was done talking for the night. He closed off the connection, reducing the prisoner's voice to a distant murmur, and let himself drift into something like sleep. In his dreams, he walked the corridors of Hogwarts, and the castle welcomed him home. Morning came too early, as it always did. Up. Get up. Aunt Petunia's voice cut through the cupboard door like a knife. Harry was already awake, had been for hours, really, but he waited a few seconds before responding, performing the grogginess expected of a normal child. I'm up, Aunt Petunia. Don't just lie there, there's breakfast to make. We have a busy day today. Harry dressed quickly in Dudley's hand-me-downs, clothes that hung off his thin frame like a tent. He'd never bother trying to get better clothes, it wasn't worth the fight, and honestly, there was a certain advantage to looking small and pathetic. People underestimated you. The kitchen was bright with July sunlight. Dudley was already at the table, his massive frame taking up 2 chairs worth of space, his piggish eyes fixed on the television in the corner. Uncle Vernon sat behind his newspaper, mustache bristling as he read something that displeased him. "There's the little freak," Dudley said without looking away from his show. "Mum, Harry's wearing my old shirt again." "It's not like you can fit it anymore," Harry said mildly. Dudley's face went red. Uncle Vernon's newspaper lowered dangerously. "What was that, boy?" Harry put on his most innocent expression. "Nothing, Uncle Vernon. Just agreeing with Dudley. His old clothes fit me perfectly." It was the truth, technically, and Harry had learned that the Dursleys had trouble processing responses that weren't openly defiant. Vernon's mustache twitched, but he couldn't find anything to object to. "Just get the bacon started," Aunt Petunia snapped. "And don't burn it like last time." Harry hadn't burned it last time, that had been Dudley, sneaking pieces when no one was looking, but he didn't argue. He just moved to the stove and started cooking, letting his hands work automatically while his mind wandered. The letters would arrive today. He was certain of it. He'd calculated the timing based on what he knew of Hogwarts' administrative processes, adjusted for the fact that his birthday fell on a specific day of the week this year. The owl would come with the morning post, or possibly deliver directly to the door. The question was how to play the inevitable conflict. "Any post yet, Petunia?" Vernon asked. "Not yet. Should be here any minute." Right on cue, the letterbox clicked. Harry kept his eyes on the bacon, his back to the hallway, even as he tracked the sounds, Aunt Petunia's footsteps, the rustle of envelopes, a sharp intake of breath. Silence. Then, too casual, nothing interesting. Just bills. Harry didn't react. But he noted the way Aunt Petunia's voice had gone tight, the subtle change in her breathing. She'd seen the letter. She was hiding it. Good. Let her. Breakfast passed in the usual way, Harry eating last, getting the smallest portions, enduring Dudley's attempts at bullying with blank-faced patience. When it was over, he retreated to his cupboard, ostensibly to stay out of the way while the Dursleys prepared for whatever they had planned. In reality, he sat cross-legged on his mattress and reached into his mind. The prisoner was waiting. "They took your letter." "I know. And you're not going to do anything about it?" "Not yet. Let them think they've won. More letters will come. They always do, Hogwarts doesn't give up easily. You know an awful lot about their procedures. I've had an excellent teacher. Unwilling, but excellent." The prisoner's rage was almost reflexive at this point, easily ignored. Harry focused instead on organizing his plans for the coming days. More letters would arrive. The Dursleys would escalate their attempts to hide them. Eventually, someone would be sent to deliver the message in person. He wondered who it would be. McGonagall, perhaps, she was the deputy headmistress, responsible for Muggleborn outreach. But Harry wasn't Muggleborn, and his situation was unique. They might send someone else. Someone more equipped to handle complications. Or they might send Dumbledore himself. Harry wasn't sure how he felt about that possibility. The Dumbledore in his prisoner's memories was formidable, brilliant, powerful, and absolutely ruthless beneath the grandfatherly exterior. He'd outmaneuvered Voldemort at every turn during the First War, playing a long game that the Dark Lord had never fully understood. He was not someone to take lightly. But he was also Harry's best source of information and protection, at least in the short term. Whatever Dumbledore's plans for him might be, they presumably involved keeping him alive. That aligned with Harry's own goals well enough. "You're too trusting," the prisoner muttered. The old man will use you up and throw you away. That's what he does. Maybe. Or maybe he'll be useful long enough for me to become strong enough that it doesn't matter. The prisoner fell silent, which Harry took as a minor victory. It was always satisfying when he managed to out-cynical Voldemort. The day passed slowly. Harry stayed in his cupboard, only emerging when called for chores or meals. He heard snatches of conversation, Vernon and Petunia whispering urgently about the letter and those people, but pretended to notice nothing. That night, he lay awake and listened to the silence of the house, and wondered what tomorrow would bring. The letters kept coming. By the third day, Vernon was purple-faced with rage and Petunia was on the edge of a nervous breakdown. Letters arrived by owl, slipped under the door, fell down the chimney. One particularly creative delivery had involved an entire squadron of birds who had somehow gotten into the kitchen and left envelopes in the cereal boxes, the refrigerator, and Dudley's underwear drawer. Harry watched it all with carefully concealed amusement. He'd known Hogwarts was persistent, but this was almost theatrical. Someone was enjoying themselves. "This is harassment," Vernon spluttered at breakfast on day 4, surrounded by a drift of green-addressed envelopes that had avalanched from the fireplace. This is terrorism. "Perhaps we should just let Harry read one," Aunt Petunia said tiredly. "Get it over with. He'll refuse, and then they'll leave us alone. And let those freaks think they've won." "Absolutely not." Vernon swept the letters into the fireplace and lit them with prejudice. "We're leaving. Today. Going somewhere they can't find us." Harry kept his expression neutral, but inside he was calculating. This was an unexpected development. The Dursleys had been more stubborn than he'd anticipated. If they ran, it would delay his introduction to the wizarding world. More importantly, it would demonstrate that the Dursleys were willing to take extreme measures to keep him from magic. That was useful information. But it also meant the situation was about to escalate. "Where will we go?" Petunia asked. "Anywhere. Everywhere if we have to. I'll not have my family terrorized by, Vernon's vocabulary failed him. By freaks." They spent the next several hours in chaos, packing bags, loading the car, arguing about routes and destinations. Harry was given a small bag and told to take only essentials, which was almost funny since he had no essentials. Everything he truly valued was in his head. The drive was long and increasingly paranoid. Vernon took random turns, doubled back, muttered about being followed. Dudley complained about missing his television programs. Petunia chain-smoked with the window cracked, something Harry had never seen her do before. They ended up at a dingy hotel somewhere in the countryside. Vernon paid in cash, gave a false name, and hustled them all into a room that smelled like mildew and old cigarettes. "There," he said with satisfaction. "Let's see them find us now." The letters arrived within the hour. The concierge brought them up, mystified, saying a man in a purple cloak had left them at the desk. Vernon threw them out the window and demanded they leave immediately. The next hotel was no better. The one after that, the same. By the time evening fell, they were on a boat, crossing choppy water to a small island with a ramshackle hut that Vernon had somehow acquired. "No one will find us here," he declared, rain dripping from his mustache. "No post. No visitors. No freaks." Harry looked at the tiny hut, felt the cold wind cutting through his thin clothes, and allowed himself a small smile. It was almost midnight. Almost his birthday. Someone was definitely coming now. The storm was biblical. Rain hammered the roof like artillery fire. Wind screamed through every crack in the walls, bringing spray from the churning sea below. Lightning turned night into stuttering day, and thunder followed so close that the hut shook with each peal. The Dursleys were asleep, Vernon and Petunia in a single bed, Dudley on the couch, Harry on the floor with a thin blanket that did nothing against the cold. They'd given him the worst spot, naturally, closest to the drafty door. Harry didn't mind. He lay on the bare floorboards and counted down the minutes to midnight, watching Dudley's watch glow on the couch above. 11:55, 11:56. 11:57, someone's coming, the prisoner whispered. I know. I can feel them. A magical signature, strong and crude. Not Dumbledore. Who then? How should I know? Your ridiculous order has always been fond of diversity. 11:58, 11:59. Harry heard it, heavy footsteps outside, audible even over the storm. Coming closer. Closer. Midnight struck. Boom. The door didn't just open, it fell, ripped from its hinges by a single blow. Standing in the frame, illuminated by lightning, was the largest man Harry had ever seen. 8 feet tall at least, shoulders wider than the doorframe he'd just destroyed, with a wild mane of hair and a beard that could have housed a family of badgers. Hagrid. Harry recognized him instantly from the memories, Voldemort's disdain for the half-giant groundskeeper, the knowledge that he'd been expelled from Hogwarts decades ago for a crime he didn't commit. Sorry 'bout that, Hagrid said, picking up the door and jamming it back into its frame. It didn't fit properly anymore. Couldn't find the knocker. Vernon appeared from the bedroom, clutching a rifle that Harry hadn't known he owned. Who are you? What do you want? I warn you, I'm armed. Hagrid looked at the gun, then at Vernon, then at the gun again. With a casual motion, he reached out and bent the barrel into a pretzel. Dry up, Dursley, you great prune. I'm here for Harry. Harry sat up, letting the blanket fall away. He made his eyes wide, his expression confused, playing the role he'd prepared for. Me? Who are you? Hagrid's face broke into a massive smile. Harry. Last time I saw you, you was only a baby. You look just like your dad, but you've got your mum's eyes. He was crying. Actual tears streaming into that enormous beard. Harry felt something twist in his chest, an unexpected sympathy for this man who'd clearly cared about his parents, who'd carried him from the ruins of their home, who'd kept some kind of faith all these years. He filed the feeling away for later examination and maintained his confused expression. You knew my parents? Knew them? Hagrid broke off, fishing in his enormous coat for a handkerchief. Sorry. Gets me emotional. Yes, Harry, I knew your parents. And I'm here to tell you about, well, to give you this. He produced an envelope from another pocket, slightly crushed but unmistakable, green ink, parchment paper, the Hogwarts crest. This is for me. Course it is. Go on, open it. Been waiting 11 years for this, I have. Harry took the envelope, making his hands tremble slightly. Inside was the letter he'd been able to recite from memory for years, but he read it as if seeing the words for the first time. Hogwarts. Witchcraft and Wizardry. Term begins September 1st. Please find enclosed. I don't understand, he said, looking up. What does this mean? What's Hogwarts? Hagrid's face went through a complicated series of expressions. They didn't tell you. Those muggles, they didn't tell you anything. Tell me what? Harry. Hagrid crouched down, which brought him roughly to Harry's eye level. You're a wizard. Harry let the silence stretch, the words hanging in the storm-torn air. Then, very quietly, I'm a what? A wizard. A thumpin' good one, I'd wager, once you've been trained up. With a mum and dad like yours, how could you not be? My parents weren't, they died in a car crash. Aunt Petunia said, "Car crash." Hagrid roared, rounding on the Dursleys with sudden fury. A car crash kill Lily and James Potter? It's an outrage. A scandal. Harry Potter not knowing his own story, when every kid in our world knows his name. Every kid knows my name. He doesn't know, the prisoner breathed in Harry's mind. He actually doesn't know about me. They never told him about the Horcrux. That was interesting. Harry filed it away and kept his focus on Hagrid. Course they do. Harry, you're famous. Has been ever since, well, since that night. Hagrid's voice dropped, losing its bluster. You really don't know, do you? Know what? And so Hagrid told him. The First War. Voldemort, Hagrid called him you-know-who, voice dropping to a whisper even though the name had no power here. The prophecy, or at least the fact that one existed. His parents' defiance, their murder, and the miracle of a baby who survived the killing curse. That's how you got that scar, Harry. Ain't no ordinary cut. That's what you get when a powerful, evil curse touches you. It killed your mum and dad, but it didn't work on you. That's why you're famous. That's why everyone knows your name. You're the boy who lived. Harry touched his forehead, tracing the lightning bolt that burned against his skin every day, that housed the fragment of soul he'd been fighting since infancy. I stopped him. Voldemort. Don't say his name. Vernon and Hagrid shouted together, then glared at each other. Harry ignored them both. But how? If he was so powerful, how did a baby stop him? No one knows. Some say he died that night, though I don't believe it. Some say he was hurt so bad he couldn't carry on. Whatever happened, something about you drove him off. And he ain't been seen since. He's not dead, Harry said quietly. Hagrid's eyes went wide. What makes you say that? Just, a feeling. Harry shrugged, adjusting his expression to something more appropriately uncertain. Like there's something unfinished. Something waiting. The half-giant studied him with unexpected shrewdness. You got good instincts, Harry. Your mum had M too. Trust M. He's not as stupid as I thought, the prisoner muttered. Be careful with this one. So what happens now? Harry asked. I go to Hogwarts. Learn magic. That's the plan. Got to get you to Diagon Alley first, that's the magical shopping street. Get your wand, your books, all that. Then September 1st, King's Cross Station, platform 9 3/4. Platform what? Hagrid laughed, a booming sound that seemed to shake the hut. You'll see. It's hidden from muggles. Most of our world is, actually. We've got our own government, our own schools, our own way of life. And now you're part of it, Harry. You're coming home. Home. The word felt strange in Harry's mouth. He'd never had a home, not really. The cupboard under the stairs wasn't home, it was just the place where he slept and maintained his prison. Hogwarts wasn't home either, despite what the memories told him. It was a strategic opportunity, a place to learn and grow and prepare for the war he knew was coming. But looking at Hagrid's honest, joyful face, Harry found himself wanting it to be true. Wanting there to be some place where he belonged, where he didn't have to pretend, where the weight of the prison wasn't his alone to bear. Sentiment, the prisoner sneered. How pathetic. Shut up, Harry thought, and for once the voice obeyed. When do we leave? He asked. Tomorrow. Early. Got a lot to do. Hagrid glanced at the Dursleys, who had been huddled together watching this exchange with mounting horror. You lot can go back to your normal lives. Forget you ever saw me. Harry won't be your problem anymore. Now see here, Vernon started, but something in Hagrid's expression stopped him. I mean it, Dursley. He's one of us. And if I hear you've been mistreating him, Hagrid let the threat hang, unfinished and all the more menacing for it. Vernon went pale. He didn't say another word. Harry spent the rest of the night on the floor, but he didn't feel the cold anymore. His mind was racing, planning, preparing. Tomorrow he'd go to Diagon Alley. He'd get his wand, meet his first wizards, start building the network he'd need for what was coming. Tomorrow his real life would begin. But tonight, lying in the dark with the storm raging outside and the prisoner seething within, he allowed himself one small moment of honest emotion. He was going to Hogwarts. And somewhere deep in his mind, the prisoner laughed softly. You think this is an ending, don't you? The poor orphan boy rescued from his miserable life. But I know better, little jailer. This is just the beginning of your trials. And you have no idea what's waiting for you. Harry smiled in the darkness. Neither do you. Dawn broke grey and drizzly, a far cry from the storm that had raged all night. Hagrid was already up, somehow, having slept sitting upright in the corner with his enormous coat as a blanket. Ready, Harry? Harry nodded, slinging his small bag over his shoulder. He hadn't brought much, there wasn't much to bring, but he had his determination and his secrets, and that was enough. The Dursleys watched them leave without a word. Vernon's face was still pale, and Petunia wouldn't meet Harry's eyes. Dudley, for once, looked almost frightened. Goodbye, Harry said. Nothing more. Nothing less. They made it back to the mainland in a boat Hagrid had apparently borrowed from somewhere, then caught a train heading south. Hagrid attracted stares wherever they went. It was hard not to notice an 8-foot man trying to squeeze into a standard seat, but he seemed oblivious to them, chattering away about Hogwarts, about Dumbledore, about Quidditch and house elves and all the wonders of the magical world. Harry listened and asked appropriate questions, drawing out information while giving nothing away. It was surprisingly easy to get Hagrid talking. The man seemed genuinely delighted to explain anything and everything. Gringotts is run by goblins, Hagrid said as they approached London. Clever folk, goblins. Not the friendliest, but there's nowhere safer for valuables. Got more security than the Ministry itself. What's the Ministry? Ministry of Magic. Our government, like. They keep the statute of secrecy, make sure muggles don't find out about us. Handle law enforcement, magical creature regulation, all that. Corrupt from top to bottom, the prisoner commented. Half the upper echelons were my people. Probably still are. Are they effective? Harry asked. The Ministry, I mean. Hagrid's face did something complicated. They mean well, mostly. Some good folk there. But there's politics. Always politics. He lowered his voice. Between you and me, Harry, they didn't always do right by people during the war. Lot of Death Eaters, those were you-know-whose followers, got off by claiming they were under mind control. Everyone knew it was rubbish, but they had money and influence. Got it in one. Hagrid gave him an approving look. Smart lad. Your mum was like that too, saw through things. They arrived at a dingy pub called the Leaky Cauldron, which seemed invisible to the muggles streaming past it on the street. Inside was dim and smoky, full of people in strange clothing drinking strange drinks. Hagrid called the bartender. The usual. Not today, Tom. On official Hogwarts business. Got young Harry Potter here. The effect was immediate. Every head in the pub turned. Whispers spread like wildfire. Harry felt dozens of eyes on him, felt the weight of their expectations and their curiosity and their hope. Harry Potter, Tom the bartender breathed. It's an honor, sir. A real honor. Then they were all crowding around him, shaking his hand, introducing themselves in a blur of names he carefully memorized. Doris Crockford. Diggle. Quirrell. Harry's blood went cold. Professor Quirrell was a nervous-looking man in a purple turban, stammering through a greeting about how he taught at Hogwarts and how wonderful it was to meet the famous Harry Potter. He was utterly unremarkable, the kind of person you'd forget 5 seconds after meeting them. But inside Harry's head, the prisoner was going insane. Him. He's here. I can feel. Harry clamped down hard on the mental connection, reinforcing the prison walls. The prisoner's screams became distant, muffled. But he could still feel it, something in Quirrell, something that resonated with the soul piece in Harry's head. Another Horcrux. No, the presence felt different. More coherent. More complete. Voldemort. The Wraith. He was possessing this man, riding along inside him like a passenger. Harry shook Quirrell's trembling hand and smiled politely, showing nothing of the turmoil inside. "Nice to meet you, Professor. I look forward to your class." "Why yes, well, I'm not sure how much I'll be able to teach you," Quirrell stammered. The dark arts, you know, very dangerous." "I'm sure you'll do wonderfully," Harry said, and watched something flicker in Quirrell's pale eyes. Something darker. Something that recognized Harry even as Harry recognized it. The handshake ended. Hagrid steered Harry through the crowd toward a back door. And in his mental prison, the soul fragment finally calmed enough to speak coherently. "You felt it. You know what he is." "I know. He's possessing Quirrell. Using him as a host. He'll be at Hogwarts, Harry. Right under Dumbledore's nose." "I know. What are you going to do about it?" Harry stepped through the back door into a small courtyard, watching as Hagrid tapped a specific brick and the wall began to rearrange itself. Beyond, a busy street stretched out, filled with shops and people and wonder. "I'm going to learn," Harry said quietly. "And I'm going to prepare. And when the time comes." "Yes." Harry stepped through the archway into Diagon Alley, feeling the magic of the wizarding world wash over him like a wave. "I'm going to destroy him." Diagon Alley was everything the memories had shown him and more. Wizards and witches bustled past in robes of every color, stopping at shops with names like Flourish and Blots and Aelop's Owl Emporium. Children pressed their faces against the window of quality Quidditch supplies, admiring the newest broomstick. A goblin in a three-piece suit walked purposefully down the center of the street, and nobody gave him a second glance. It was magical. Literally, yes, but also in the other sense, wondrous, fantastical, impossible. Harry felt something loosen in his chest, some tension he hadn't known he'd been carrying. "Don't get comfortable," the prisoner warned. "Half the people in this alley would sell you out for a handful of galleons." "I'm not getting comfortable. I'm observing." And he was. Behind the wonder, Harry was cataloging everything: the layout of the street, the security on various shops, the way people moved and interacted. He noted the subtle deference paid to certain families, the way some shopkeepers' smiles didn't reach their eyes, the calculated displays of wealth and status. A society, like any other. With rules and hierarchies and hidden dangers. Their first stop was Gringotts, the Wizarding Bank. The building was enormous, white marble columns and bronze doors and stern-faced goblins standing guard. Inside was even more impressive, vast halls filled with industrious goblins, mountains of gold and gems visible through distant archways. "Key, please," said the goblin at the desk, barely glancing up. Hagrid fumbled through his coat, producing a small golden key. "There we go. Harry Potter's vault." The goblin's eyes flickered to Harry, a quick assessment, nothing more, and he nodded. "Very well. This way." The cart ride down to the vault was thrilling in a way Harry hadn't expected. The tracks twisted and turned through the deep earth, passing underground lakes and stalactites, glimpsing other carts carrying important-looking wizards to their own hoards. "Your parents' vault isn't the only one you could access," the prisoner murmured. "I remember the locations of several Death Eater caches. Fortunes in gold and artifacts, hidden away for safekeeping." "And how would an 11-year-old explain having that knowledge?" "You're no ordinary 11-year-old. But I need to look like one. At least for now." The vault was smaller than Harry had expected, but still impressive: stacks of gold galleons, silver sickles, bronze nuts. More money than the Dursleys would see in a lifetime. "This is all mine." "Your parents left it to you," Hagrid said, looking away with something like embarrassment. "Not a fortune by some standards, but, well, it's yours." Harry filled his money bag, calculating the exchange rate and planning his purchases. Wand first, that was essential. Then books, supplies, anything that might help him in the year ahead. Hagrid, he said as they returned to the surface, that man Quirrell, you said he teaches at Hogwarts. Defense against the dark arts, yeah. Though he wasn't always so nervous. Took a year off, went traveling, came back changed. Some say he had a bad run-in with vampires in Albania. Albania. Harry felt a chill that had nothing to do with the underground tunnels. Is that common? Teachers changing like that? The dad apposition's cursed, they say. Haven't had a professor last more than a year since, well, since forever. Hagrid shrugged his massive shoulders. Bad luck, maybe. Or maybe the job just attracts unstable sorts. The curse is my doing, the prisoner said smugly. Dumbledore refused to give me the position. So I made sure no one else could keep it either. Harry filed that away. The defense position was cursed, which meant Quirrell, and by extension, the wraith possessing him, would be gone by the end of the year. That was useful. It meant he didn't need to act immediately, the problem had a built-in expiration date. Unless, of course, Voldemort was planning something that would happen before then. Their next stop was Ollivander's. The shop was narrow and dusty, packed floor to ceiling with narrow boxes that Harry knew contained wands. Behind the counter stood an old man with pale, silvery eyes that seemed to see right through him. Ah, Mr. Potter. I wondered when I'd be seeing you. Ollivander's voice was soft, almost reverent. It seems only yesterday your mother was in here buying her first wand. 10¼ inches, swishy, made of willow. Nice wand for charm work. You remember every wand you've ever sold? Every single one, Mr. Potter. Every single one. Ollivander moved closer, his eyes fixed on Harry's face. Your father, on the other hand, favored a mahogany wand. 11 inches. Pliable. A little more power and excellent for transfiguration. Well, I say your father favored it, it's really the wand that chooses the wizard, of course. He was close now, close enough that Harry could smell dust and old magic on him. Those silvery eyes studied Harry's scar with unsettling intensity. And that's where. Ollivander whispered. I'm sorry to say I sold the wand that did it. 13½ inches. You. Powerful wand, very powerful, and in the wrong hands, well. If I'd known what that wand was going out into the world to do. Harry said nothing. He could feel the prisoner's attention sharpening, could feel the soul fragment straining towards something in this shop. The brother wand. It's here. Let's find you a wand, then, Mr. Potter. Ollivander seemed to shake off his reverie. Which is your wand arm? Right. The measuring tape began its work, apparently of its own accord, while Ollivander pulled boxes from the shelves. Try this one. Beechwood and dragon heartstring. 9 inches. Nice and flexible. Harry took the wand and felt nothing. No connection, no warmth. He waved it anyway, and Ollivander snatched it back almost immediately. No, no. Here, ebony and unicorn hair, 8½ inches, springy. Wrong again. And again. And again. He's working toward it, the prisoner observed. He wants to see your reaction when you find the one. Harry understood. Ollivander wasn't just fitting him for a wand, he was testing something. The pile of rejected wands grew higher, and the wandmaker's eyes grew brighter. Tricky customer, eh? Not to worry, we'll find the perfect match here somewhere, I wonder, now, yes, why not, unusual combination, holly and phoenix feather, 11 inches, nice and supple. The moment Harry's fingers touched the wood, he knew. Warmth flooded through him, starting in his chest and spreading outward. The wand felt like an extension of his arm, like it had always been there, waiting. He raised it and brought it down in a smooth arc. Golden sparks erupted from the tip, filling the shop with light. Oh, bravo! Ollivander cried. Yes, indeed, oh, very good. Well, 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 how curious, how very curious. What's curious? Harry asked, though he already knew. Ollivander fixed him with that piercing gaze. I remember every wand I've ever sold, Mr. Potter. It so happens that the phoenix whose tail feather is in your wand gave another feather, just one other. It is very curious indeed that you should be destined for this wand when its brother, why, its brother gave you that scar. The shop went very quiet. Even the dust motes seemed to freeze in the air. Poetic, the prisoner sneered. The old man always did love his dramatic moments. The wand chooses the wizard, Ollivander continued softly. And I think we must expect great things from you, Mr. Potter. After all, he who must not be named did great things, terrible, yes, but great. Harry met those silvery eyes without flinching. I intend to do great things, Mr. Ollivander. But not terrible ones. Something flickered in the wandmaker's expression, surprise, perhaps, or reassessment. He nodded slowly and began rapping the wand. 7 galleons, Mr. Potter. And, good luck. Harry paid and left the shop with the holly wand tucked safely in his pocket. Outside, Hagrid was waiting with 2 ice cream cones, looking pleased with himself. Got it, then. Good lad. Let's get the rest of your things. The rest of the shopping passed in a blur. Books at Flourish and Blots, Harry bought several that weren't on the required list, drawn from the prisoner's recommendations. Robes at Madame Malkin's, a brief, unmemorable encounter with a blonde boy who drawled about houses and Quidditch. Potion supplies at the apothecary, a telescope and scales, a pewter cauldron. At the Owl Emporium, Hagrid insisted on buying Harry a birthday present. Can't have you going off without a proper gift from your first friend in the wizarding world. Harry chose a beautiful snowy owl with amber eyes, thinking of how useful a messenger would be. He named her Hedwig, after a saint he'd read about in one of Dudley's discarded history books. A pet, the prisoner said dismissively. Sentiment. A tool, Harry corrected. One that happens to be beautiful. The day wound down as they made their way back through the leaky cauldron, back into Muggle London. Hagrid pressed a ticket into Harry's hand, the Hogwarts Express, September 1st, platform 9 3/4. You'll be all right getting there. I'll figure it out. Hagrid beamed. That's the spirit. You'll do well at Hogwarts, Harry. I can feel it. He leaned in closer. And don't you worry about them Dursleys. Anyone gives you trouble, you just send word. I've got friends who'd be happy to sort things out. It was a threat, wrapped in kindness. Harry appreciated both. Thank you, Hagrid. For everything. Ah, go on with you. But the half-giant was wiping his eyes again. See you at Hogwarts, Harry Potter. See you soon. And then he was gone, vanishing into the crowd with impossible ease for someone his size. Harry was left alone on the street, surrounded by muggles who had no idea that magic was real, holding a ticket to a world they couldn't imagine. Now what? The prisoner asked. Harry looked down at his bag of supplies, felt the weight of his new wand against his hip. He thought about Quirrell and Voldemort, about Hogwarts and Dumbledore, about the war that was coming whether anyone believed it or not. Now, he said quietly, I prepare. He started walking toward the tube station, just another small, shabby boy in the London crowd. No one looked twice at him. No one saw the fortress in his mind, the prisoner in his soul, the fire in his eyes. September was 6 weeks away. He had work to do. The weeks at Privet Drive passed differently after Diagon Alley. The Dursleys avoided him now, giving him Dudley's second bedroom without being asked, leaving him alone for hours at a time. Vernon still glared and Petunia still pursed her lips, but neither of them tried to interfere with his preparations. The threat Hagrid had implied hung over them like a sword. Harry used the time well. During the days, he read. Not just the standard textbooks, those he'd already absorbed through the prisoner's memories, but the additional books he'd bought, the ones on magical theory and history and law. He cross-referenced everything with what he already knew, building a comprehensive picture of wizarding society. "Your preparation is excessive," the prisoner observed during one late-night study session. "You already know more than any first year should. I know what you knew 50 years ago. The world has changed. Magic doesn't change. Politics shifts, fashions come and go, but power remains power. And that's exactly what I need to understand. Who has power now? Who lost it? Who wants it back?" Nights were for other work. Harry descended into his mental fortress, walking the corridors of extracted memories, building new archives, reinforcing old walls. The prisoner watched with growing unease as Harry's control expanded, as the cell grew smaller and the fortress grew stronger. "You're different than you were," the soul fragment admitted one night. "When I first woke in your mind, I thought you'd be easy to overwhelm. A child, barely formed. But you're not a child, are you? You haven't been for a long time. I was never allowed to be a child. You made sure of that. I made you strong. Everything you are, everything you can do, it's because of me." Harry considered this as he walked the perimeter of the prison, checking the walls for weakness. "Maybe. But I'm not grateful. And I'm not going to become you." "What makes you so sure?" "Because I've seen what you are. All of it. Every memory, every choice, every cruelty. I understand you, Tom Riddle. And understanding is the opposite of becoming." The prisoner went silent, a rare occurrence. Harry finished his inspection and withdrew to the waking world, satisfied. 3 days before September 1st, he received a letter. Not by owl, but by normal post, Hermione Granger, the bushy-haired girl from the bookshop, who had apparently gotten his address through some impressive detective work. "Dear Harry," the letter read. "I hope you don't mind me writing. We met briefly at Flourish and Blots, and I've been thinking about our conversation about advanced magical theory. I've done quite a lot of reading on the subject and would love to discuss it further. I'll be on the Hogwarts Express on September 1st, perhaps we could share a compartment. Yours, Hermione Granger." Harry read the letter twice, then smiled. He remembered her, intense, eager, obviously brilliant. The kind of person who made others uncomfortable because she made them feel stupid by comparison. The kind of person who might understand. He wrote back, "Hermione, I'd be delighted. Look for me in the last compartment of the train. Harry." "Making friends already?" the prisoner asked. "How touching. Making connections. There's a difference." "Is there?" Harry didn't answer. He sealed the letter and walked to the post office, thinking about the year ahead. Hogwarts. Quirrell. Voldemort. Dumbledore. Snape. 1,000 variables, 1,000 potential dangers, 1,000 opportunities. He was as ready as he could be. On the morning of September 1st, Harry loaded his trunk onto the night bus, summoned with a wave of his wand, to the horror of a passing Muggle, and made his way to King's Cross Station. The Dursleys hadn't offered to drive him, and he hadn't asked. The barrier between platforms 9 and 10 was exactly where Hagrid had said it would be. Harry watched a family of redheads pass through it one by one, studied the technique, and then walked straight at the solid brick wall without slowing down. The sensation was strange, a moment of pressure, a flash of darkness, and then he was through, standing on a platform that hadn't existed seconds ago. The Hogwarts Express gleamed before him, scarlet and magnificent, already crowded with students and families. "Home," the prisoner said, his voice unexpectedly soft. "I spent some of my happiest years on this train, going to that school. And then you tried to destroy it. Everything ends eventually. Even happiness. Especially happiness." Harry didn't respond. He loaded his trunk into the last compartment, settled Hedwig's cage, and sat down by the window to wait. Outside, the platform buzzed with noise and color, tearful goodbyes, excited greetings, the organized chaos of hundreds of young wizards heading off to school. A knock on the compartment door. "Harry?" "It's Hermione Granger." "May I come in?" He opened the door and there she was, bushy hair, bright eyes, arms full of books. She looked nervous and eager and absolutely certain that she belonged here. "Thank you for responding to my letter. I wasn't sure if you would, lots of people find me a bit much, you know. I talk too much and I read too much and I ask too many questions. But you seemed different when we met. Like you actually wanted to have a real conversation." "I did," Harry said. "Please, sit down." She did, arranging her books around her with the ease of long practice. "I've read all the first-year textbooks, of course. And a fair bit beyond. Have you gotten to Bathilda Bagshot's historical analysis yet? Her interpretation of the Goblin rebellions is fascinating, if a bit biased toward the Ministry perspective." "I have some concerns about her methodology in the later chapters," Harry said. "She relies too heavily on Ministry sources without interrogating their potential propaganda value." Hermione's eyes went wide. Then she smiled, a real smile, delighted and surprised. "Oh, this is going to be fun." The train began to move. Outside the window, London fell away, replaced by green countryside rushing past. Inside the compartment, Harry and Hermione talked, about history and theory and the nature of magic, while the prisoner listened in silence and the miles to Hogwarts counted down. "This one is dangerous," the soul fragment observed. "She's too clever to fool for long." "Maybe," Harry thought. "Or maybe she's exactly what I need." The door opened again. A red-headed boy, one of the family Harry had seen on the platform, stuck his head in. "Mind if I sit here? Everywhere else is full." "Go ahead," Harry said. The boy entered, tripping slightly on his robes. "Thanks. I'm Ron. Ron Weasley. Harry Potter." Ron's ears went red. "I know. I mean, everyone knows who you are. But I'm not," he sat down heavily, looking mortified. "Sorry. I'm rubbish at this." "At what?" "Meeting famous people. Meeting anyone, really. I've got 5 older brothers, it's hard to stand out." Hermione was looking at Ron with poorly disguised disdain. Harry could see her cataloging his worn robes, his obvious nervousness, his lack of academic credentials. He could also see an opportunity. "Tell me about your brothers," Harry said, settling back in his seat. "I've never had siblings." "What's it like?" Ron blinked, clearly not expecting the question. Then he started talking, and as he did, some of the tension left his shoulders. He wasn't stupid, Harry realized, just uncertain. Overshadowed. Looking for a place to belong. "You're collecting strays," the prisoner accused. "I'm building a team. The book-smart one and the family-connected one. Both useful in different ways. And when they're no longer useful." Harry watched Ron describe his brother Charlie's work with dragons, saw Hermione's disdain slowly shift to grudging interest, felt the compartment fill with warmth and possibility. "Then I'll have been lucky enough to have friends," he thought. "Something you never understood." The prisoner had no response to that. Hours passed. The landscape changed, hills and forests, bridges and tunnels. The food trolley came and went. Stories were shared and questions asked and tentative friendships formed. As evening fell and the train wound through mountain passes, the conversation turned to Hogwarts itself. "I hope I'm in Gryffindor," Hermione said. "It sounds by far the best. Dumbledore himself was in Gryffindor, you know. Though Ravenclaw wouldn't be bad." "All my family's been in Gryffindor," Ron said. "I don't know what they'll say if I'm not. Not that I'm as good as Bill or Charlie or Percy, but still." They both looked at Harry. "What about you?" What house do you think you'll be in? Harry considered the question. He knew, from the memories, that the Sorting Hat would look into his mind. It would see the fortress, the prisoner, the decades of stolen knowledge. What would it make of all that? I don't know, he said honestly. I suppose we'll find out. The train slowed. Outside the windows, lights appeared, a station, and beyond it, the silhouette of a castle on a distant hill. Hogwarts, Hermione breathed. Harry felt the prisoner stir in his mental prison, felt ancient hatred and desperate longing surge against the walls. This was where Tom Riddle had first learned magic, first dreamed of power, first set foot on the path that would lead to Voldemort. It was also where Harry would learn to destroy him. The train stopped. Students poured onto the platform, guided by Hagrid's booming voice, "Fur's years. Fur's years over here." Harry stepped off the train into the cold Highland air, looked up at the castle blazing with light against the dark sky, and felt something click into place. "You're ready," the prisoner said. It wasn't a taunt this time, more like an acknowledgement. "Whatever you're planning, you're as ready as you can be." "I know." "Then go. Claim what's yours. And remember, little jailer, I'll be watching. Always watching." Harry smiled, falling into step with Hermione and Ron as they followed Hagrid toward the boats that would carry them across the lake. "I'm counting on it," he whispered. The journey across the lake was silent, every first year struck dumb by the sight of the castle. Its towers and turrets reached toward the stars, its windows glittered with candlelight, its walls seemed to pulse with ancient magic. When the boats reached the shore, Harry was the first to step out. He walked toward Hogwarts with his head high and his eyes open, the prisoner raging uselessly in his head, the war already begun. Chapter 1 End. Chapter 2, Diagon Alley's shadows. The castle swallowed them whole. Harry followed the stream of first years through massive oak doors into an entrance hall larger than the Dursleys' entire house. Torches flickered in iron brackets, casting dancing shadows across stone walls hung with tapestries older than most Muggle nations. The ceiling disappeared into darkness far above, and somewhere in the distance, Harry could hear the rumble of hundreds of voices. Professor McGonagall met them at the foot of a marble staircase. She was exactly as the prisoner's memories showed her, stern, Scottish, formidable, though the years had added silver to her hair and deeper lines around her eyes. "Welcome to Hogwarts," she said, her voice cutting through the nervous chatter. "The start of term banquet will begin shortly, but before you take your seats, you must be sorted into your houses. The sorting is a very important ceremony because, while you are here, your house will be something like your family within Hogwarts." Harry listened with half an ear, more interested in cataloguing his fellow first years. The blonde boy from Madame Malkin's, Draco Malfoy, he'd learned from the prisoner's extensive files on Death Eater families, stood with two hulking companions, radiating aristocratic disdain. A round-faced boy clutched a toad with white-knuckled desperation. A dark-skinned boy with high cheekbones observed the hall with calculating interest. And there, near the back, a blonde girl with ice-blue eyes who watched everything and everyone with the careful attention of someone who'd learned early that observation meant survival. "Greengrass," the prisoner supplied. "Old family. Neutral during the war, neither supported me nor opposed me openly. Clever of them." Harry filed the information away as McGonagall led them into the great hall. The ceiling was the night sky, not a painting or an illusion, but actual magic that mirrored the heavens above. For long tables stretched the length of the hall, packed with students in black robes, their house colors displayed on ties and scarves and badges. At the far end, the staff table held the professors, and at its center sat Albus Dumbledore. Harry met the headmaster's eyes across the hall. The twinkling gaze found him immediately, held him for a fraction of a second, and then moved on. But in that moment, Harry felt the lightest brush against his mental shields, gentle, almost apologetic, like someone knocking on a door they expected to find unlocked. He kept his expression neutral. Dumbledore's eyes widened slightly, the only sign of surprise, and then he smiled and looked away. "He knows something's different about you," the prisoner warned. Be careful. I intend to be. McGonagall placed a battered hat on a stool, and the hat began to sing. Harry didn't listen to the words. He knew the house traits, knew the history, but he watched the reactions of his fellow first years. Hermione mouthed along with particularly interesting phrases. Ron looked vaguely ill. Malfoy affected boredom. The Greengrass girl's expression didn't change at all. The song ended. The sorting began. Abbott, Hannah. A pink-faced girl stumbled forward, sat on the stool, and had the hat placed on her head. A moment later, Hufflepuff. The table on the right erupted in cheers. Hannah practically ran to join them, relief evident in every line of her body. Pathetic, the prisoner sneered. The house of the mediocre and the meek. The house of the loyal and the hard-working, Harry corrected. Don't underestimate them. Loyalty is valuable. The sorting continued. Bones, Susan went to Hufflepuff. Boot, Terry to Ravenclaw. Brown, Lavender became the first Gryffindor, earning raucous applause from the red and gold table. Granger, Hermione. Hermione practically sprinted to the stool, jamming the hat on her head with desperate eagerness. It took almost a full minute before, Gryffindor. She beamed, catching Harry's eye as she walked to her new house table. He nodded slightly, and her smile widened. Greengrass, Daphne. The blonde girl walked forward with measured steps, her face betraying nothing. The hat barely touched her head before declaring, Slytherin. She rose with the same measured grace and walked to the green and silver table, taking a seat apart from the other first years, alone in a crowd. She'll be useful, the prisoner observed. If you can win her trust. That's a significant if. More names. Longbottom, Neville, the round-faced boy, went to Gryffindor after a long deliberation, looking shocked. Malfoy barely had the hat on before it screamed Slytherin. Moon and Knott and Parkinson followed. Potter, Harry. The great hall went silent. Then the whispers started, a wave of sound that swept through all four tables, carrying his name like a curse or a prayer. Harry walked forward, keeping his pace steady, his expression calm. He felt hundreds of eyes on him, felt the weight of their expectations and their curiosity and their hope and their fear. The boy who lived. The symbol. The myth. He sat on the stool. McGonagall lowered the hat onto his head, and the world went dark. Well, well, well. The voice was inside his head but not like the prisoner, different, older, woven into the fabric of the hat itself. Harry felt it pressing against his mental shields, examining them with something like wonder. What have we here? Walls within walls within walls. And behind them. Don't, Harry thought sharply. Peace, Mr. Potter. I have no interest in your prisoner. I've touched 1,000 dark minds over the centuries, another fragment of Tom Riddle holds no novelty for me. You know what he is. I know what you both are. The question is, what do you want to become? Harry considered the question seriously. He could ask for Slytherin, the house of cunning and ambition, where he could learn to navigate political waters, where his hidden knowledge would be most useful. Or Ravenclaw, where he could pursue magic without the social complications of either extreme. But he thought of Hermione's smile. Of Ron's nervous hope. Of the war that was coming and the allies he would need. Gryffindor, he thought. Where I can do the most good. An interesting choice. The hat's voice was approving. You have the cunning of Slytherin, the intellect of Ravenclaw, the loyalty of Hufflepuff. But you choose courage, not because you lack fear, but because you've decided fear won't control you. Is that what courage is? One definition among many. Very well, Mr. Potter. I hope you find what you're looking for in Gryffindor. The red and gold table exploded. Harry removed the hat, handed it back to McGonagall with a polite nod, and walked to his new house. The Weasley twins were chanting, "We got Potter," at the top of their lungs. Hermione had saved him a seat. He sat down, accepted the backslaps and congratulations, and looked up at the staff table. Dumbledore was watching him with those twinkling eyes, his expression unreadable. Beside him, a hook-nosed man with greasy black hair stared at Harry with undisguised loathing. "Snape," the prisoner confirmed. "The traitor. He'll make your life difficult." Harry met Snape's gaze without flinching. The professor's eyes narrowed, and Harry felt that familiar brush against his shields, harder than Dumbledore's, more aggressive. Harry didn't just block it, he let Snape see a flash of something. A memory, but not Harry's memory. Voldemort's. A flash of green light. A woman screaming. The image of Lily Potter, dying. Snape's face went white. He looked away, his hands gripping the table hard enough to shake his goblet. "That was cruel," the prisoner observed. "I approve. It was necessary. He needed to understand that I know things. That I'm not what he expects." The sorting finished. Dumbledore stood, said a few nonsensical words, and the feast appeared. Harry ate mechanically, participating in conversation when required, but his attention was elsewhere. At the staff table, Quirrell was chatting with a tiny professor who had to be Filius Flitwick. The possessed man seemed perfectly ordinary, perfectly harmless. But Harry could feel the wrongness radiating from him, could feel the prisoner in his head straining toward the other soul fragment like iron filings toward a magnet. "He's planning something," the prisoner said. "I don't know what, but he's planning. Then we'll have to find out." The Gryffindor common room was exactly as the prisoner's memories showed it, round and cozy, full of squashy armchairs and crackling fire, decorated in red and gold. The portrait of the fat lady guarded the entrance, requiring a password that Percy Weasley provided with pompous authority. Caput Draconis. Harry followed the other first-years up to the dormitory, a circular room with 5 four-poster beds. His trunk was already there, Hedwig's cage set beside it. She hooted softly as he approached. "Long day," he murmured, letting her nip his finger affectionately. The other boys were settling in, Ron taking the bed next to Harry's, Neville across the room, and 2 others named Seamus Finnegan and Dean Thomas. Normal boys, excited and nervous and completely unprepared for the magical world they'd entered. Harry waited until the others fell asleep. Their breathing steadied, deepened, and only then did he slip out of bed and pad silently to the window. The ground stretched out below, silver with moonlight. The forbidden forest was a dark mass in the distance. The lake glittered like a mirror. "What are you thinking?" the prisoner asked. "I'm thinking about the 3rd-floor corridor." "Ah. The forbidden one. Dumbledore mentioned it at the feast, certain death to anyone who enters. Which means there's something there worth protecting. Something valuable enough to risk students' lives for. Or something Dumbledore wants certain people to find." Harry turned that over in his mind. A test, perhaps. A trap. Dumbledore was famous for his machinations, for plans within plans. If he'd brought something valuable to Hogwarts and then publicly warned students away from it, he had to know that would only attract attention. The question is who he's trying to attract, Harry thought. And why? He would need more information. Tomorrow, he would begin gathering it. But tonight, he descended into his mental fortress and continued his work. The prisoner had been unusually cooperative lately, eager, almost, to share information. That worried Harry more than the usual resistance. "You're planning something," Harry said, walking the perimeter of the inner prison. "You've been too helpful. Perhaps I've simply accepted my situation." "You've never accepted anything in your existence. What's changed?" The prisoner was silent for a long moment. When he spoke, his voice was thoughtful rather than hostile. "Your friend in the turban. My other self. He's weaker than I expected. Desperate. Whatever vessel he's using isn't stable, I can feel it degrading from here." "And that concerns you why?" "Because if he dies, truly dies, then I'm all that's left. The last fragment. And you'll have no reason to keep me alive. Harry stopped walking. It was the first time the prisoner had acknowledged, even obliquely, that his existence depended on Harry's choices. I'm not going to destroy you, Harry said slowly. Not until I understand what you are. What I am, because of you. Sentiment. Pragmatism. You're a resource. I'd be stupid to waste you. And if you find a way to separate us? To remove me without killing yourself? Harry considered the question honestly. He'd thought about it, of course, freedom from the constant presence, the whispers, the weight of carrying a piece of Voldemort's soul. But he'd also thought about what he'd lose. Then I'll decide based on what's best for the war, he said finally. Not what's best for either of us. The prisoner laughed, a strange sound, almost admiring. You really are nothing like I expected. Nothing like your father, certainly. He was all emotion and impulse. You're cold. Calculating. I'm what you made me. No. You're what you made yourself, despite me. There's a difference. Harry didn't know how to respond to that. He finished his inspection in silence and withdrew to the waking world, troubled by something he couldn't quite name. The first week of classes passed in a blur of new information. Harry played his role carefully, attentive enough to avoid suspicion, but not so attentive that he stood out. He answered questions correctly when called upon, made deliberate mistakes in his practical work, and spent his free time observing rather than studying. His fellow students were an interesting lot. Hermione was exactly what he'd expected, brilliant, driven, socially awkward in ways that isolated her from classmates who found her intensity overwhelming. Ron was simpler but not stupid, he understood people in ways Hermione didn't, knew how to navigate social situations she could barely comprehend. The Slytherins were more complicated. Malfoy had established himself as their leader, trading on his father's influence and his own petty cruelty. But not all of them followed willingly. Daphne Greengrass kept her distance, as did a dark-skinned boy named Blaise Zabini and a nervous-looking girl named Tracy Davis. Potential allies, the prisoner noted during one of Harry's observation sessions. The neutral faction. They don't want war, they want to survive. That makes them predictable. Survivable is valuable. Potions with Snape was a particular challenge. The professor seemed determined to humiliate Harry at every opportunity, calling on him with impossible questions, criticizing his work regardless of quality, deducting points for imaginary infractions. Harry bore it with equanimity. He knew why Snape hated him, the memories he'd shown the professor had made that clear, and he knew that hatred was complicated by guilt and grief and decades of festering resentment. Engaging with it would be counterproductive. Besides, he had more important concerns. Defense against the dark arts was taught by Quirrell, and every class was an exercise in subtle observation. The professor stammered through lessons that were deliberately useless, teaching defense techniques that would get any actual defender killed. His turban smelled of garlic, supposedly to ward off vampires, but Harry knew better. He's playing a role, the prisoner observed during one particularly painful lecture. The nervous academic, too afraid to teach anything useful. But watch his eyes when he thinks no one's looking. Harry watched. And he saw what the prisoner meant, moments when the stammer disappeared, when Quirrell's gaze sharpened with intelligence and malice, when something else looked out through those pale eyes. He's waiting for something, Harry concluded. Building toward something. The stone. It has to be the stone. Harry had figured that out by the second day. The security measures Hagrid had mentioned, the Forbidden Corridor, Dumbledore's pointed warning, it all pointed to the Philosopher's Stone, the legendary artifact created by Nicholas Flamel. Eternal life and unlimited gold. Exactly what a disembodied Dark Lord would need to return. So Dumbledore is using the stone as bait, Harry reasoned. Luring my other self into a trap. Or testing me. Seeing if I'll go after it. Why would I? I don't need eternal life. No. But you need power. And the stone represents power. If I were Dumbledore, I'd want to know if you could be tempted. It was a disturbing thought. Harry added it to his mental files and continued watching. 3 weeks into term, Harry received his first solid lead. It came, oddly enough, from Hagrid. The half-giant had invited Harry for tea, and Harry had accepted, partly to maintain the relationship, partly because Hagrid had a habit of revealing things he shouldn't. The hut was small and warm, filled with the smell of rock cakes and dog. Fong, Hagrid's enormous boarhound, immediately claimed Harry's lap, refusing to move despite weighing roughly as much as a small car. "Good to see you settling in," Hagrid said, pouring tea into cups the size of small buckets. "Heard you've been doing well in classes." "I try to keep up." "You're being modest. McGonagall says you've got real talent for transfiguration. And Flitwick thinks you might be a natural at charms." Hagrid beamed. "Your parents would be proud, Harry." "Did you know them well?" "My parents? Oh, yes. Not as well as some, but well enough. Your dad was a troublemaker, him and his friends, they were always getting into mischief. But your mum, she was something special. Kindest heart at Hogwarts, everyone said. And brilliant too. She could have done anything she set her mind to." Harry listened, filing away details. The prisoner's memories of his parents were fragmented and biased. Voldemort had never understood them, only feared what they represented. "Hagrid," Harry said carefully, "what happened after they died? How did Dumbledore know to send me to the Dursleys?" Hagrid's face went through several complicated expressions. "Well, now, I mean, it was Dumbledore's decision, wasn't it? He knows best about these things. But how did he know? Did someone tell him about Voldemort attacking?" Hagrid flinched at the name but pressed on. "Dumbledore has his ways, Harry. He knows things. I went to get you from the ruins myself, actually. Carried you out on that flying motorbike of Sirius's." He stopped abruptly, looking horrified at himself. "Sirius?" Harry asked, keeping his voice innocent. "Who's Sirius?" "No one. Nothing. I shouldn't have said that." Hagrid was sweating now, unable to meet Harry's eyes. "Just forget I mentioned it, all right? Have another rock cake." Harry took the rock cake and didn't press further. But the name was burned into his memory. Sirius. Sirius Black, the prisoner supplied reluctantly. "One of your father's friends. He was their secret keeper, the one who told me where they were hiding. He betrayed them. So everyone believes. He's in Azkaban now. Has been since that night." Harry turned this information over carefully. The prisoner's memories of Sirius Black were fragmentary. Apparently Voldemort had dealt with the man through intermediaries. But something didn't add up. "You said he was their secret keeper. But you also said he was your father's best friend. People betray their friends all the time. For power. For fear. For 1,000 petty reasons. Maybe. Or maybe the story isn't as simple as everyone believes." He filed it away for future investigation. Right now, he had more immediate concerns. "Hagrid," he said, shifting topics, "what do you know about the third-floor corridor?" Hagrid knocked over his tea. "How do you know about, who told you, that's none of your business, Harry. Dumbledore mentioned it at the feast. Said it was forbidden. And you should stay far away from it. That's not something for first years to be worrying about. That's between Dumbledore and Nicholas Flamel." He clapped his hands over his mouth, horror dawning on his face. "I shouldn't have said that. I should not have said that. Nicholas Flamel." Harry let his eyes go wide, innocent. "Who's that?" "No one. Forget I said anything." Hagrid practically shoved Harry toward the door. "You should be getting back to the castle. Got classes tomorrow. Don't want to be out after dark." Harry allowed himself to be ushered out, making appropriate protests about wanting to stay and chat. But inside, he was satisfied. Nicholas Flamel. The Philosopher's Stone. His suspicions were confirmed. Now we know what Quirrell is after, he thought to the prisoner. And now we need to figure out how to stop him. Or whether to stop him at all. What do you mean? If my other self gets the stone and returns to full power, that's obviously bad for you. But if you interfere and Dumbledore learns how much you know, that might be worse. Harry walked back toward the castle, turning the problem over in his mind. The prisoner had a point. Revealing himself prematurely could be catastrophic. But letting Voldemort return would be worse. Unless there was a third option. A way to stop Quirrell without revealing his own knowledge. I need more information, he decided. About the defenses, about Quirrell's plan, about what Dumbledore expects to happen. And how do you intend to get it? Harry looked up at the castle, its windows glowing warm against the darkening sky. The old-fashioned way. Observation. Interrogation. And a little strategic breaking and entering. The map came to him by accident. Or rather, what seemed like an accident but was probably anything but. Harry had been exploring the castle at night, carefully, using the invisibility cloak Dumbledore had sent him for Christmas, when he stumbled across the Weasley twins in a 7th-floor corridor. They were arguing about something, gesturing at a blank piece of parchment, and they didn't notice Harry until he cleared his throat. Blimey! Fred, or possibly George, nearly jumped out of his skin. Where'd you come from? I was just passing by. Harry let the cloak slip off his shoulders, watching their expressions shift from startled to calculating. What's that you've got? The twins exchanged a look, that silent communication of people who'd spent their entire lives together. This, said the one who might be George, is the secret to our success. Nicked it from Filch's office first year, added the other. Didn't know what it was at first. Just looked like a blank parchment. But then we figured out the trick. He tapped the parchment with his wand. I solemnly swear that I am up to no good. Lines spread across the page, forming a detailed map of Hogwarts. Every room, every corridor, every secret passage. And moving through them, tiny labeled dots representing every person in the castle. Harry's breath caught. This was invaluable, a complete surveillance system, showing him exactly where everyone was at any moment. He could track Quirrell's movements, avoid Filch and Snape, plan his investigations with perfect knowledge. The Marauder's map, Fred said proudly. Made by Moony, Wormtail, Padfoot, and Prongs. Those names meant nothing to Harry, but the prisoner stirred with sudden interest. Nicknames. Your father and his friends had nicknames for each other. I never knew what they were, but this might be his work. My father's. Harry studied the map with new eyes, tracing the familiar handwriting in the margins, the clever magic woven into every line. Why are you showing me this? He asked. The twins shared another look. We've been watching you, Potter. You're not like other first years. You're up to something. Something interesting. And we respect that. Takes a true mischief maker to recognize another. Besides, Fred added with a grin, we've memorized the map by now. Don't really need it anymore. Consider it a gift. From one troublemaker to another. They pressed the map into his hands, showed him how to clear it, mischief managed, and disappeared into the darkness with matching waves. Harry stood in the corridor, holding his father's creation, feeling something complicated twist in his chest. Sentiment, the prisoner accused. Connection, Harry corrected. My father made this. With his friends. Before I killed him. Yes. How does that make you feel, little jailer? Holding the work of the man I murdered? Harry considered the question honestly. It makes me feel like I have more to protect. More to fight for. And more to avenge. Maybe. But revenge isn't the point. Survival is. He activated the map, watching the dots move through the castle. Dumbledore in his office. Snape pacing in the dungeons. Quirrell, in the third-floor corridor. Interesting, the prisoner breathed. He's testing the defenses. Then so should I. Harry pulled on his cloak and moved silently through the castle, following the map's guidance. He avoided the patrolling professors, slipped past Mrs. Norris, and reached the third-floor corridor just as Quirrell's dot retreated toward his own quarters. The door was locked. A simple Alohomora opened it, too simple, really, for what supposedly lay beyond. Inside was darkness, and in the darkness, a sound. Breathing. Heavy, rumbling breathing that seemed to come from multiple sources at once. Harry lit his wand and nearly dropped it. The dog was massive, 3 heads, each one the size of a small car, attached to a body that took up most of the room. It was sleeping, thank Merlin, its 6 eyes closed and its 3 mouths slack. Cerberus. Or something like it. A guardian beast, legendary and lethal. And beneath its enormous paw, a trapdoor. Fluffy, the prisoner said with something like amusement. Hagrid's pet. I'd forgotten about him. Hagrid has a 3-headed dog named Fluffy. Hagrid has always had unusual taste in pets. The real question is what's beneath that trapdoor. Harry didn't try to find out, not tonight. The dog stirred in its sleep, one massive head turning toward him, and he retreated quickly, closing the door behind him. He had what he needed. Now he could plan. The weeks that followed were a careful dance of observation and preparation. Harry watched Quirrell through the map, noting his patterns, his contacts, his nocturnal visits to the third-floor corridor. The possessed professor was growing more desperate, his movements more erratic, his teaching more distracted. Whatever timeline he was working on, it was accelerating. At the same time, Harry strengthened his position at Hogwarts. He cultivated friendships, genuine ones, not just strategic alliances, with Hermione and Ron, with Neville, even with the Weasley twins. He attended study sessions and Quidditch matches, participated in house activities, made himself visible as a normal student doing normal student things. But he also built other connections. Quieter ones. Daphne Greengrass approached him one afternoon in the library, sliding into the seat across from him with practiced grace. Potter. Greengrass. You're not what I expected. Neither are you. She studied him for a long moment, those ice-blue eyes revealing nothing. Most Gryffindors would have rejected me already. Red and gold doesn't mix with green and silver, not since the war. Most Gryffindors haven't thought about why that is. And you have? I think the war hurt everyone. I think the people who benefit from keeping the houses divided aren't the ones who suffered. He met her gaze steadily. I think anyone who wants to move forward instead of backward is worth talking to. Something flickered in her expression, surprise, maybe, or reassessment. The neutral families feel the same way. We're tired of being caught between extremes. So what do you want? To survive. To prosper. To not have to choose between 2 kinds of destruction. She leaned forward slightly. The question is, what do you want, Potter? Harry considered his answer carefully. This was a test, he knew, an evaluation of whether he was worth the political risk. I want to be ready, he said finally. For whatever comes next. And I want to have people I can trust when it does. Trust is earned. I know. I'm willing to work for it. She studied him a moment longer, then nodded, a small, controlled gesture that nonetheless felt significant. There's a study group. Neutral students from all houses. We meet in an abandoned classroom on the 4th floor, Tuesday evenings. You'd be welcome. I'll be there. She rose, gathering her books. At the door, she paused. Potter. The other Slytherins, Malfoy and his crowd, they're watching you. Be careful. I always am. She left without another word. Harry watched her go, feeling the prisoner's attention sharpen. "You're building a power base," the soul fragment observed. "Across house lines. Dumbledore won't like that. Dumbledore doesn't have to know. Not yet. And when he finds out, then we'll see who's really running this school." The study group was everything Harry had hoped for. A dozen students, ranging from second to fourth year, gathered in a dusty classroom that hadn't been used in decades. They came from all four houses: Daphne and Tracy Davis from Slytherin, a Ravenclaw named Padma Patil and her friend Suli, two Hufflepuffs named Susan Bones and Hannah Abbott, and a scattering of others whose names Harry quickly memorized. They studied together, shared notes, helped each other with difficult subjects. But more importantly, they talked, about politics, about history, about the war their parents had lived through and the shadow it still cast. "My aunt lost her whole family," Susan Bones said one evening, her voice quiet but steady. "Both sides. Death Eaters killed her brother. The Ministry killed her cousin during a raid that turned out to be based on false information. She says the war wasn't good versus evil, it was chaos. Everyone losing." "That's what my parents say too," Daphne agreed. "The Dark Lord was evil, yes. But the response to him wasn't always good. People got caught in the middle. People like us." Harry listened more than he spoke, absorbing their perspectives, understanding the landscape of wizarding society in ways the prisoner's memories couldn't show him. These weren't Death Eaters or resistance fighters, they were ordinary people trying to navigate a world that had nearly torn itself apart. "They're afraid," the prisoner observed. "Afraid it will happen again. It will happen again. The question is what happens differently this time." He began sharing his own knowledge, carefully, indirectly, framed as things he'd read or heard rather than things he'd ripped from a Dark Lord's mind. Magical theory that most students didn't encounter until Newt level. Political insights that made Daphne's eyes narrow with interest. Combat techniques disguised as defensive exercises. The group grew. Third years joined, then fourth years. Even a few fifth years started attending, drawn by whispers of unusually productive study sessions. "You're changing things," Hermione said one night, walking back to Gryffindor Tower with him after a particularly long session. "The way people talk about the houses, about each other. It's different. Is that good or bad? I don't know." She looked at him sideways, her expression thoughtful. "You're not just studying, are you? You're preparing for something. What makes you say that? The way you watch everyone. The questions you ask. The things you teach." She stopped walking, forcing him to stop too. "Harry, what are you planning?" He could lie to her. It would be easy, she trusted him, would accept whatever explanation he offered. But looking at her earnest face, her worried eyes, he found he didn't want to. "There's something wrong at this school," he said quietly. "Something dangerous. I'm trying to understand it. The third-floor corridor. Among other things. And you're not going to tell me what?" "Not yet. Not until I'm sure." She studied him for a long moment, then nodded, not satisfied, but accepting. "When you're ready to tell me, I want to know. All of it. When I'm ready, you'll be the first." She smiled, small and worried and genuine, and they continued walking. "You're getting attached," the prisoner warned. "That's dangerous. Maybe. Or maybe attachment is what makes the fight worth fighting." The confrontation came in late November. Harry was leaving the library when Malfoy stepped out of the shadows, flanked by Crabbe and Goyle. The blond boy's face was twisted with something between anger and fear. "Potter. Malfoy. You think you're clever, don't you? Building your little coalition. Making friends with blood traitors and mudbloods." Malfoy's voice was tight. "My father knows what you're doing. He's not pleased. I wasn't aware I needed your father's approval. You need everyone's approval, Potter. You're the boy who lived, everyone's watching you. Everything you do sends a message. Malfoy stepped closer, his wand visible in his hand. And the message you're sending right now is dangerous. Harry didn't reach for his own wand. Didn't step back. Just met Malfoy's eyes with calm certainty. Is that a threat? It's a warning. The Dark Lord might be gone, but his followers aren't. The families who supported him haven't forgotten, haven't forgiven. You're making enemies you can't afford. And if I wanted to make friends instead? Malfoy blinked, clearly not expecting that response. What? Your father sent you to warn me. But he didn't tell you to fight me, did he? He's too smart for that. He's testing, seeing how I respond, what kind of person I am. Harry smiled slightly. So let me give you a message to take back. I don't want war. I don't want to destroy anyone. But I will protect myself and my friends, and I will not be intimidated. My father, your father survived the last war by being clever, not by being strong. He knows that open conflict with me is lose-lose. What he doesn't know is whether I can be reasoned with. Harry held Malfoy's gaze. Tell him the answer is yes. But reason goes both ways. For a long moment, no one moved. Then Malfoy nodded, a sharp, jerky motion, and stepped aside. This isn't over, Potter. It doesn't have to be. Harry walked past them without looking back, feeling their eyes on him until he turned the corner. Only then did he allow himself a small smile. That was either very clever or very stupid, the prisoner observed. It was necessary. The political situation won't stabilize until someone reaches across the divide. Might as well be me. And if Lucius Malfoy decides you're too dangerous to negotiate with, then we'll deal with that when it happens. But I don't think he will. He's a survivor, not a fanatic. He'll take the deal I'm offering if it benefits him. You sound very confident for someone who's 11 years old. I've been at war since I was 2. Age is just a number. December brought snow and cold and the looming shadow of the Christmas holidays. Most students were going home, but Harry had decided to stay. The Dursleys weren't home, and more importantly, he had work to do. The castle would be nearly empty, perfect for deeper investigation. Hermione was staying too, though she wouldn't say why. Ron was going home to the Burrow, but he'd promised to write. The study group would be on hiatus until January, but Daphne had slipped him a note before leaving, keep your eyes open. Something's happening in the pureblood families. Something big. The night before the holidays began, Harry received an unexpected gift. A package arrived at breakfast, delivered by a school owl. Inside was a silvery cloth that flowed through his fingers like water, and a note in spidery handwriting. Your father left this in my possession before he died. It is time it was returned to you. Use it well. No signature. But Harry knew the handwriting from documents he'd seen in Dumbledore's office during his midnight explorations. The invisibility cloak. One of the Deathly Hallows. Dumbledore is testing you, the prisoner said urgently. He wants to see what you'll do with it. Whether you can be trusted. Or he's giving me a tool and expecting me to use it wisely. Same thing, in the end. Harry held the cloak up to the light, watching it shimmer and shift. His father had worn this. Had used it for mischief, for courage, for the small rebellions of youth. And now it was his. Use it well, the note said. Harry intended to. The Christmas holidays were quiet and productive. Harry used the cloak and the map together, exploring every corner of the castle, mapping the defenses around the third-floor corridor, watching Quirrell's increasingly frantic movements. The possessed professor was spending hours in the library, researching something. Harry couldn't get close enough to see what without risking detection. But he gathered other intelligence. Conversations overheard in the staff room. Documents glimpsed in unlocked offices. The slow accumulation of knowledge that would serve him in the months to come. He also found the mirror of Eriste. It was in an unused classroom on the 4th floor, covered with a dusty sheet. Harry pulled the sheet off and stood before the glass, watching as images formed in its depths. Not his parents. He'd barely known them, they were ideas more than memories. No, the mirror showed him something else. Something more painful. He saw himself, older, standing in a sunlit room. No scar on his forehead. No darkness in his eyes. No prisoner in his head. Just Harry, happy, ordinary Harry, surrounded by people who loved him. The desire hit him like a physical blow. To be free. To be normal. To not carry this weight. Pathetic, the prisoner sneered, but his voice was strange. Almost uncertain. Wanting to be ordinary. You could be great. I don't want to be great. I want to be happy. No one's ever been truly happy. It's an illusion. Maybe. But it's an illusion I could live with. Harry forced himself to step back from the mirror, to look away from the image of everything he couldn't have. The mirror showed desire, not truth. And desire was a weakness if you let it control you. He returned to the mirror every night for a week, not to look, he'd learned that lesson, but to study the magic. It was ancient, powerful, tied to something beyond simple enchantment. And there was something hidden in it, something that resonated with power. The philosopher's stone. He couldn't see it, the mirror only showed him his heart's desire, but he could feel it. Dumbledore had hidden the stone in the mirror itself, protected by the device's unique magic. Only someone who wanted to find the stone but not use it would be able to retrieve it. Clever, the prisoner admitted. The old man always was clever. Too clever. He's expecting someone to come for it. He wants them to. Or he wants you to figure this out. Another test. Harry left the mirror room and didn't return. He had what he needed. Now he just had to wait. The holidays ended. Students returned. The castle filled with noise and life again. And Harry began to prepare for what he knew was coming. He trained harder, pushing his magic to its limits and beyond. He extracted more memories from the prisoner, focusing on combat techniques and defensive wards. He practiced wandless magic in secret, honing skills that most adult wizards couldn't match. He also strengthened his relationships. Hermione helped him research obscure magical protections. Ron provided a connection to the broader wizarding world, insights into how normal families thought and felt. Daphne kept him informed of Slytherin politics, the whispers and rumors that flowed through the pure blood networks. And all the while, he watched Quirrell. The professor was deteriorating. His stammer had gotten worse, his turban had developed an unpleasant smell, and his eyes had taken on a hunted quality. Whatever was inside him was burning through its host. He'll make his move soon, the prisoner predicted. He has to. The vessel won't last much longer. Then we need to be ready. Harry. He looked up from his dinner to find Hermione watching him with worried eyes. You've been distracted all week. What's wrong? Nothing. Just thinking. About what? He glanced around the great hall, at the students eating and laughing, at the professors at their table. At Quirrell, picking at his food with trembling hands. About endings, he said. And beginnings. Hermione followed his gaze to Quirrell, and her eyes narrowed. You know something. About him. I suspect something. There's a difference. Then tell me. Let me help. Harry considered it. Telling Hermione everything would be a risk, but keeping her in the dark might be a greater one. If something happened to him, someone else needed to know the truth. Not here, he said. Tonight. The common room, after everyone's asleep. She nodded, not satisfied but accepting. And that night, in front of the dying fire, Harry told her. Not everything. Not the prisoner, not the Horcrux, not the 9 years of mental warfare. But enough. Quirrell. Voldemort. The stone. The trap Dumbledore had set and the confrontation that was coming. When he finished, Hermione was pale but composed. You've known this all along. Since the beginning of the year. I've suspected. I've been gathering evidence. And you didn't tell anyone? Dumbledore, McGonagall, what would I tell them? That I feel something wrong about a professor. That I've been sneaking around the castle at night gathering intelligence. Harry shook his head. They'd think I was mad. Or worse, they'd start asking questions I can't answer. Can't or won't. Both. Hermione was silent for a long moment. Then she reached out and took his hand. Whatever you're hiding, whatever you're afraid to tell me, it doesn't matter. I trust you. And when this is over, when we've stopped Quirrell, you can tell me the rest. Or not. Either way, I'm with you. Harry felt something twist in his chest, gratitude and fear and something else he couldn't name. Thank you, he said. That means more than you know. She's dangerous, the prisoner warned. She'll figure you out eventually. Maybe. But maybe that's not the worst thing. Outside the window, snow was falling. The fire crackled. And somewhere in the castle, a monster in human form was preparing to make his move. Harry was ready. Chapter 2 End. Chapter 3, The Sorting of Serpents. The Hogwarts Express thundered through the Scottish Highlands, steam billowing white against the grey February sky. Harry sat in the last compartment, watching the landscape blur past, his mind already 3 moves ahead. The Christmas holidays had changed things. Not visibly, to anyone watching, Harry Potter was still the same quiet, capable first year who'd made unexpected friends across house lines. But beneath the surface, the pieces were moving faster now. Quirrell's desperation was reaching a breaking point. Dumbledore's tests were intensifying. And somewhere in the depths of Harry's mind, the prisoner had grown unsettlingly cooperative. You're thinking too loudly, the soul fragment observed. I can hear the gears turning from here. Then stop listening. Impossible. We share a skull, remember? The compartment door slid open, and Hermione entered, her arms full of books as usual. She'd spent the holidays researching. Harry had given her enough information to point her in the right direction without revealing his true sources. I found something, she said without preamble, dropping into the seat across from him. About the defenses around the stone. I'm listening. There are 7 of them. 1 from each of the main professors involved in protecting it, McGonagall, Flitwick, Sprout, Snape, Quirrell, and 2 others I couldn't identify. Plus Fluffy, obviously, who belongs to Hagrid. Harry nodded. This matched what he'd pieced together from observation and the prisoner's knowledge of Hogwarts protection schemes. The interesting thing, Hermione continued, lowering her voice, is that they're designed to be passable. Difficult, yes, but not impossible. It's almost like they're meant to be beaten, Harry finished. A gauntlet, not a fortress. Exactly. Which means either Dumbledore is overconfident, or he wants someone to get through. They sat in silence, contemplating the implications. The door slid open again, and Ron tumbled in, his face flushed from running. Sorry I'm late. Mum made me pack 3 times, kept insisting I'd forgotten something. He collapsed into the seat beside Hermione. What did I miss? We were discussing security measures, Harry said. Oh. That sounds boring. Ron pulled out a chocolate frog and bit its head off. Anything more interesting happening? Not yet. But even as he said it, Harry's attention was drawn to movement in the corridor. A group of Slytherin students passed by, Malfoy's crowd, Crabbe and Goyle flanking their leader like trained dogs. But behind them, walking alone, was Daphne Greengrass. She caught Harry's eye through the glass and gave a barely perceptible nod before continuing past. Your neutral faction contact, the prisoner observed. What message is she sending? That something's changed over the holidays. Something I need to know about. Harry excused himself and slipped out of the compartment, following Daphne at a distance until she ducked into an empty carriage near the front of the train. He joined her a moment later, sliding the door shut and casting a quick privacy ward. Greengrass. Potter. She turned to face him, her expression more animated than he'd ever seen it. We need to talk. Quickly, before anyone notices we're missing. I gathered. What happened? The pureblood families had their annual winter gathering. The Malfoys hosted. Daphne's voice was clipped, precise. I wasn't supposed to hear what I heard, but the Greengrass family has always been good at listening. Go on. They're planning something. Not the Death Eaters, or not just the Death Eaters. It's bigger than that. Representatives from families that were never marked, never openly involved in the war. They were talking about contingencies. Contingencies for what? Daphne met his eyes. For the Dark Lord's return. The words hung in the air between them. Harry felt the prisoner's attention sharpen to a knife's edge. They know, the soul fragment breathed. Or they suspect. My followers have always been patient. How certain are you? Harry asked. Certain enough. They didn't use his name, no one ever does, but the implications were clear. Something's happening. Something that's made them believe the old war isn't as over as everyone thinks. Did they mention Hogwarts? The school? Not directly. But there was talk of investments in the next generation. Of positioning. Of making sure certain students were properly guided. Daphne's lip curled. They mean Draco, obviously. But others too. The children of families that stayed neutral are suddenly very interesting to people who didn't care about us before. Harry processed this rapidly. It confirmed what he'd suspected. The pureblood network was aware, at least in general terms, that Voldemort might not be as dead as the Ministry proclaimed. They were hedging their bets, preparing for a future where the Dark Lord returned to power. Thank you for telling me, he said. This is valuable. I'm not telling you out of charity, Potter. The Greengrass family survived the last war by being smarter than everyone else. If there's going to be another war, I need allies who can actually win. She studied him with those ice-blue eyes. Can you win? It was a genuine question, not a challenge. Harry considered his answer carefully. I don't know, he said honestly. But I'm going to try. And I'd rather have you with me than against me. Then we understand each other. She straightened her robes, composing herself. I should get back before Parkinson notices I'm gone. She reports everything to Draco. One more thing. Harry caught her arm as she moved toward the door. The study group. I want to expand it. More students, more houses, more depth. What kind of depth? The kind that goes beyond academics. Defense training. Political education. Preparing people for what's coming, even if they don't know exactly what that is. Daphne's expression flickered, surprise, calculation, something that might have been respect. That's dangerous. If the wrong people find out, then we'll be careful. But doing nothing is more dangerous. The neutral families want to survive. This is how. She nodded slowly. I'll reach out to the others. Quietly. We'll discuss it at the first meeting back. Tuesday. Tuesday. She slipped out of the compartment, leaving Harry alone with his thoughts. You're building an army, the prisoner said. Right under Dumbledore's nose. I'm building a support network. There's a difference. Is there? You're recruiting students to your cause, training them, binding them to you with trust and shared purpose. That's what I did, in the beginning. No. You recruited followers. I'm cultivating allies. Followers obey without question. Allies think for themselves and choose to stand with you anyway. A distinction without a difference, in the end. Power is power. Then you never understood power at all. The feast that night was subdued, the great hall still half empty from students who'd stayed home for extended holidays. Harry sat with Ron and Hermione at the Gryffindor table, picking at his food while his eyes wandered the room. Quirrell looked worse than ever. The professor's hands shook as he ate, and his turban seemed to have developed a subtle bulge on one side that hadn't been there before. Whatever was inside him was growing desperate. He's running out of time, the prisoner confirmed. The possession is killing Quirrell. If he doesn't get the stone soon, the vessel will collapse and my other self will be forced to find a new host. Or die. Or die. Though I suspect he has contingencies. Harry filed this away. The timeline was accelerating. Whatever confrontation was coming, it would happen soon, weeks, not months. Harry. He looked up to find Hermione watching him with concern. You've barely eaten anything. Are you feeling all right? Just tired from the journey. He forced a smile. I'll be fine. Ron was oblivious, arguing loudly with Seamus about something Quidditch-related. But Hermione's eyes lingered on Harry, and he could see the questions forming behind them. She knew something was wrong. She didn't know what. Soon, he would have to tell her. Not everything, he wasn't sure he could tell anyone everything, but enough. The weight of carrying these secrets alone was becoming harder to bear. Weakness, the prisoner sneered. Humanity, Harry corrected. Something you never understood. Classes resumed the next morning, and with them came new challenges. Potions with Snape was brutal as always. The professor had returned from the holidays in a fouler mood than usual, snapping at students and deducting points with gleeful malice. Harry bore it with equanimity, producing adequate but not exceptional work, keeping his head down. But during one particularly vicious diatribe about Harry's alleged incompetence, something changed. Harry felt the touch against his mental shields, not the usual aggressive probe, but something subtler. Snape was trying to read him without being noticed, sliding past defenses rather than battering against them. Harry let him in. Not all the way, never all the way, but just enough. He let Snape see a carefully curated selection of memories, Harry studying late at night, Harry practicing defensive spells, Harry watching Quirrell with suspicious eyes. Snape's expression flickered. The mental touch withdrew. Acceptable, the professor said finally, his voice strange. Barely. It was the closest thing to a compliment Harry had ever received from him. What was that about? The prisoner demanded. I showed him what I wanted him to see. Enough to make him curious. Enough to make him an unwitting ally. Against Quirrell. Against whatever's coming. Snape hates me, but he hates Voldemort more. If he suspects something wrong with Quirrell, he'll investigate. And if he investigates, he'll be another obstacle in my other self's path. Exactly. The rest of the day passed uneventfully. Charms with Flitwick, Transfiguration with McGonagall, History of Magic with Binns. Normal classes, normal lessons, the steady rhythm of Hogwarts life. But beneath the surface, Harry was always watching. Always planning. The study group met that Tuesday as planned. The abandoned classroom on the 4th floor had been transformed over the holidays. Someone, Harry suspected Daphne, had acquired comfortable chairs and study tables. Warming charms kept the winter chill at bay. Silencing wards ensured their conversations remained private. 15 students gathered that night, more than had ever attended before. Harry recognized most of them from previous sessions, but there were new faces too, a third-year Ravenclaw named Anthony Goldstein, a second-year Hufflepuff named Ernie Macmillan, and, surprisingly, a fourth-year Slytherin named Marcus Flint, who was rumored to have Death Eater connections. Before we begin, Harry said, standing before the group, I want to address something directly. Over the holidays, some of you may have heard rumors about the political situation. About things that might be changing. The room went quiet. Students exchanged glances. I'm not going to pretend I know everything that's happening. But I know enough to be concerned. And I think, he paused, choosing his words carefully. I think we need to be prepared. Not just academically, but practically. Prepared for what? Anthony Goldstein asked. For whatever comes next. Susan Bones spoke up, her voice steady despite the tension in her shoulders. My aunt works in the ministry. She's been worried lately, won't tell me why, but I can see it. Something's happening that the adults don't want us to know about. That's exactly my point. Harry looked around the room, meeting eyes one by one. The adults are keeping secrets. Protecting us, they'd say. But protection without preparation just makes us victims. So what do you propose? Daphne asked, playing her role perfectly. I propose we expand what we're doing here. Not just studying for exams, studying for survival. Defense practice. Political education. Learning to think strategically, to understand the forces shaping our world. Harry smiled slightly. I'm not asking anyone to fight. I'm asking people to be ready. Silence stretched. Then Marcus Flint, of all people, laughed. You've got stones, Potter, I'll give you that. A first year, talking about politics and strategy like you actually know something. He leaned forward, his eyes sharp despite his brutish reputation. But here's the thing, you might be right. My father talks about the old days like they might come back. And if they do, I'd rather be on the winning side than dead. So you're in. I'm listening. That's not the same thing. Fair enough. Harry turned to the others. Anyone who wants to leave can leave now. No judgment, no consequences. This isn't a club, it's a commitment. No one moved. Good. Then let's begin. The session that followed was different from previous meetings. Harry taught basic defensive spells, Protego, Stupefy, Expelliarmus, demonstrating technique that should have been beyond a first year's capability. He explained the theory behind the magic, the way intent shaped outcome, the importance of speed and precision over raw power. You're showing too much, the prisoner warned. They'll wonder where you learned this. Let them wonder. Right now, they need confidence more than they need explanations. By the end of the session, even Marcus Flint looked impressed. Where did you learn all this? Hermione asked quietly as the others filed out. Books. Practice. Instinct. Harry shrugged. Some people are born with talent for magic. I was born with talent for survival. That's not really an answer. I know. She studied him for a long moment, her expression unreadable. Then she nodded. When you're ready to give me a real answer, I'll be here. She left. Harry stayed behind, staring at the empty classroom, feeling the weight of everything he was building and everything he was hiding. She's getting closer, the prisoner observed. To the truth. To you. I know. What will you do when she figures it out? Harry didn't have an answer. February became March, and the castle began to thaw. Quidditch season resumed, and with it came the Gryffindor-Hufflepuff match that would determine who faced Slytherin in the finals. Harry had declined a spot on the team, too visible, too much time commitment, but he attended the match with Ron and Hermione, watching the players wheel and dive against the grey spring sky. Oliver Wood's really improved since last year, Ron observed, his eyes tracking the Gryffindor keeper. If we beat Hufflepuff today, we've got a real shot at the cup. Assuming nothing goes wrong, Hermione said darkly. She was right to be worried. Harry had been monitoring Quirrell's movements, and the professor had been unusually active lately, nighttime excursions to the third-floor corridor, urgent conversations with mysterious figures, increasingly erratic behavior in class. Something was building. Harry could feel it. The match ended with Gryffindor victorious, 320 to 180. The common room celebration lasted well into the night, but Harry slipped away early, making his way to the Ollery with a letter in his pocket. The letter was addressed to Sirius Black. It had taken weeks to compose, weeks more to decide whether to send it. Everything Harry knew about Sirius came from second-hand sources: the prisoner's fragmentary memories, Hagrid's accidental revelations, careful research in the Hogwarts library. None of it painted a clear picture. Sirius Black had been James Potter's best friend. He'd been named Harry's godfather. And supposedly, he'd betrayed Harry's parents to Voldemort and murdered 13 Muggles when confronted. But something about the story didn't add up. "Why are you doing this?" the prisoner demanded. "Black is a murderer. A traitor. Maybe. Or maybe he was framed. Either way, I need to know the truth. The truth won't change anything. Your parents are still dead. I'm still in your head. Knowing why won't bring them back. No. But it might help me understand who I can trust. And right now, I need every advantage I can get." The letter was simple, untraceable, sent through a series of redirects that would prevent anyone from tracking it back to Harry. It asked only one question: what really happened that night? Harry attached the letter to a school owl, not Hedwig, who was too distinctive, and watched it disappear into the night sky. Probably nothing would come of it. Azkaban was supposed to be inescapable, the prisoners too mad to communicate coherently. But Harry had learned never to assume anything was impossible. He returned to the common room just as the celebration was winding down. Ron had passed out on a couch, chocolate frog wrappers scattered around him. Hermione was reading by the fire, her brow furrowed with concentration. "What are you studying?" "Nothing." She closed the book quickly, too quickly. "Just some extra reading." Harry caught a glimpse of the title: Obscure Forms of Mental Magic. "She's researching occlumency," the prisoner observed with something like amusement. "She suspects. Let her suspect. It's better than knowing." "Hermione." Harry sat down across from her. "Whatever you're looking for, you won't find it in books." "What do you mean?" "I mean some things can't be learned from reading. Some things have to be experienced." He met her eyes. "When the time comes, I'll explain. But not yet. Not until I'm sure you'll understand." "Understand what?" "That I'm not what anyone thinks I am." She stared at him for a long moment. Then, slowly, she nodded. "I can wait." "But Harry," she reached out and touched his hand. "Whatever you're hiding, it's eating at you. I can see it. Just promise me you're not alone in this. Whatever this is." "I promise." It wasn't entirely true. But it was close enough. The next study group meeting brought unexpected developments. More students had asked to join, word had spread about the practical defense training, and suddenly everyone wanted to learn. Harry had to turn people away, explaining that the group was at capacity, that maybe next year they could expand. The truth was more complicated. More members meant more risk, more chances for someone to talk, to ask questions, to notice things they shouldn't. Harry needed to consolidate his current circle before expanding further. But one new member did join, Neville Longbottom. The round-faced boy had approached Harry after herbology, his expression nervous but determined. "I want to learn," Neville said. "To fight. To protect myself and other people." "Why now?" Neville's jaw tightened. "Because my parents couldn't. They were Aurors, the best. And it wasn't enough. I don't want to be helpless like they were." Harry studied him carefully. The prisoner's memories contained information about Frank and Alice Longbottom, tortured to insanity by Bellatrix Lestrange, confined to St. Mungo's for the past decade. Their son had been raised by an overbearing grandmother, constantly compared to parents he could never truly know. And according to the prophecy Harry had extracted from the prisoner's memories, Neville could have been the chosen one. If Voldemort had interpreted the signs differently, it would be Neville with a scar and a soul fragment, Neville bearing this impossible burden. "You're welcome to join," Harry said. Tuesday evenings, 4th floor, abandoned classroom at the end of the corridor. "Come ready to work." Neville's face lit up. "Thank you, Harry. You won't regret it." "Another stray," the prisoner commented. "You're building a collection. I'm building an alliance. Neville has potential, more than anyone realizes, including himself. With proper training." "With proper training, what?" "He'll be your soldier. Your weapon. He'll be ready. When the time comes, he'll be ready." That night, Harry dreamed of Albania. It was happening more frequently now, visions of a dark forest, ancient and malevolent, where something had awakened long ago. The dreams weren't memories, exactly, but they felt like memories. As if something was trying to show him, to warn him. In the dream, Harry walked through twisted trees, their branches reaching like claws against a starless sky. The air was thick with the smell of decay and old magic, and somewhere ahead, something was watching. "You feel it," the prisoner whispered, and for once his voice wasn't mocking. "The thing I found. The thing that found me. What is it?" "Old. Older than Hogwarts, older than wands. It doesn't have a name, not anymore. But it has hunger." Harry moved deeper into the forest, drawn by something he couldn't name. The trees grew denser, the darkness more complete. And then, eyes. Dozens of eyes, opening in the shadows. Too many eyes, glowing with a cold light that had nothing to do with souls or magic or anything Harry understood. "It saw me," the prisoner said. "When I fled to Albania after my fall. I thought I was hiding. But it was the forest that found me, not the other way around. It tasted my soul. It wants more." "More what?" "More pieces. More fragments. That's why I created the Horcruxes, to escape death. But I inadvertently created something else. A beacon. A trail that something ancient can follow." Harry woke with a gasp, his scar burning, his sheets soaked with sweat. The thing in Albania. Another enemy, another threat, something that made even the prisoner afraid. As if Voldemort and Quirrell and Dumbledore's tests weren't enough. "Is it coming?" Harry asked, staring at the ceiling of his dormitory. "The thing in the forest?" "Not yet. It moves slowly, patiently. But it's aware now. Aware of you. Aware of me. Why? Because you're carrying two pieces of my soul. The fragment in your head and the wraith-possessing Quirrell, both connected to you, both within your reach. It makes you interesting. Wonderful. Another thing trying to kill me. Or consume you. The distinction may not matter in the end." Harry lay in the darkness, feeling the weight of everything pressing down on him. Voldemort. The stone. The ancient horror in Albania. The growing suspicion of his friends. The tests from Dumbledore that never seemed to end. He was 11 years old. He felt ancient. "Get some rest," the prisoner said, and his voice was almost gentle. "Tomorrow will bring new challenges. You'll need your strength." "Since when do you care about my strength?" "Since I realized that your survival is my survival. We're bound together, little jailer. For better or worse." Harry closed his eyes and, eventually, slept. March brought rain and mud and a letter from Gringotts. The goblin correspondence was formal and businesslike. The Potter vaults required attention, certain investments needed approval, and would Mr. Potter please visit at his earliest convenience. Harry had expected something like this. The Potters had been wealthy, not Malfoy wealthy, but comfortable, and an 11-year-old heir appearing after a decade of absence would naturally attract attention. He responded requesting a meeting during the Easter holidays, citing school commitments. The goblins agreed, and Harry filed the matter away for future consideration. But the letter set him thinking about resources. About what he had and what he might need. The Potter vault contained gold, enough for 7 years of Hogwarts and then some. But gold was only one kind of power. Information was another. Alliances were another. And the ability to project force, to protect himself and others, was perhaps the most important of all. He was building a coalition, yes. But coalitions needed resources. Training facilities. Safe houses. Weapons, magical and otherwise. The infrastructure of resistance. You're thinking like a general, the prisoner observed. Planning for war. Someone has to. You're 11. And you were 16 when you made your first Horcrux. Age doesn't determine capability. Fair point. Though I was a prodigy. So am I. The prisoner had no response to that. The Easter holidays came faster than expected. Most students went home, including Ron, whose mother had insisted. But Hermione stayed again, research, she said vaguely, and Neville stayed too, looking uncomfortable about his grandmother's expectations. Harry used the time productively. He spent hours in the library, researching topics that wouldn't appear in any standard curriculum: word breaking, memory magic, the theory of soul anchoring. The prisoner provided context and correction, grudgingly sharing knowledge that Voldemort had spent decades accumulating. "You're learning faster than I did," the soul fragment admitted one night. "It took me years to understand what you're grasping in weeks. I have a teacher. You had to figure everything out alone." "Is that what I am now? A teacher?" "Among other things." "And when you've learned everything I know?" Harry paused in his reading, considering the question. "Then we'll see what happens next." That's not an answer. No. But it's honest. The meeting at Gringotts was scheduled for the 3rd day of the holidays. Harry took the night bus to London. He'd mastered the summoning charm months ago, and made his way to Diagon Alley through the leaky cauldron. The Wizarding Street was quiet in the early spring, most shops operating with skeleton staffs. Gringotts was as imposing as ever, its white marble facade gleaming in the weak sunlight. Harry entered through the bronze doors and approached the nearest teller. "Harry Potter to see account manager Ragnarok. I have an appointment." The goblin's eyes widened slightly at the name, but his expression remained professionally neutral. "One moment, Mr. Potter." A few minutes later, Harry was escorted into a private office deep within the bank. The goblin waiting for him was old even by goblin standards, his skin weathered like ancient parchment, his eyes sharp as cut glass. "Mr. Potter. Please, sit." Harry sat, studying the office. It was plain but expensive, the simplicity of someone who didn't need to prove anything. "I appreciate you taking the time to meet with me," Harry began. "Time is money, Mr. Potter. Let's not waste either." Ragnarok slid a folder across the desk. "This is the current state of your holdings. As you'll see, the Potter fortune is substantial but not unlimited. Your parents' war contributions depleted approximately 30% of the liquid assets." Harry opened the folder, scanning the numbers. It was more wealth than he'd expected: multiple vaults, investments in wizarding businesses, shares in several important enterprises. "What about non-monetary assets?" he asked. "Property, artifacts, that sort of thing?" Ragnarok's eyes glinted with something that might have been approval. "Astute question. The Potters hold the deed to several properties, including a cottage in Godric's Hollow, currently uninhabitable, and a townhouse in London that has been maintained in your absence. There is also a family vault containing items of historical significance." "What kind of items?" "That, Mr. Potter, is something you'll need to see for yourself." The cart ride to the family vault was deeper than Harry's trust vault, passing through layers of security that made his skin prickle with ancient magic. When they finally stopped, it was before a door carved with runes that pulsed with protective energy. "Blood key," Ragnarok said, producing a small knife. "The vault recognizes Potter blood only." Harry pricked his finger without hesitation, letting a drop of blood fall onto the door. The runes flared, the door swung open, and Harry stepped inside. The vault was vast, far larger than it should have been, clearly expanded by magic. Shelves lined the walls, holding books, artifacts, weapons, and objects Harry couldn't identify. Gold glittered in piles, but it was the other contents that drew his attention. A pensieve, silver and ancient, resting on a pedestal of black marble. A collection of wands, each one radiating distinct magical signatures. Books, hundreds of books, many of them clearly prohibited by ministry decree. And in the center of the vault, on a stand of its own, a cloak that Harry recognized immediately. The invisibility cloak, the prisoner breathed. But that's impossible. You already have it. The one Dumbledore sent me. Look closer. Harry approached the cloak, studying it carefully. It was similar to the one in his trunk, similar, but not identical. The fabric was slightly different, the shimmer less pronounced. A replica, he realized. A very good replica. Dumbledore has the real one. He sent you a copy. Harry filed this information away, his mind racing. Dumbledore had the true invisibility cloak, one of the Deathly Hallows. He'd kept it hidden, sent Harry a substitute that was good enough to pass casual inspection but lacked the original's power. Why? What was the old man planning? Mr. Potter? Ragnarok's voice came from the doorway. Is everything satisfactory? Yes. Thank you. Harry turned away from the cloak, his expression carefully neutral. I'd like to arrange access to this vault during school holidays. And I'd like to set up a separate account for discretionary expenses. Of course. The goblins of Gringotts are always pleased to assist the scion of an ancient house. Business concluded, Harry left the bank with his mind full of new questions and his pockets full of resources he'd need for the battles to come. That night, back at Hogwarts, Harry told Hermione about the vault. Not everything, not the cloak revelation, not his suspicions about Dumbledore, but enough. The existence of the family resources, the books and artifacts, the potential they represented. Why are you telling me this? She asked, her voice careful. Because I trust you. And because I might need help sorting through everything in there. Some of those books are in languages I don't know, and some of the artifacts are probably dangerous without proper research. You want me to help you catalog your family's magical inheritance. I want you to help me understand what I have. What I can use. Harry met her eyes. The world is more complicated than it looks, Hermione. The war everyone thinks is over, it isn't. Not really. And when it starts again, I want to be ready. Hermione was silent for a long moment. Then she nodded. I'll help. But Harry, she reached out and took his hand. You have to promise me something. What? When things get dangerous, really dangerous, you won't try to handle it alone. You'll let me help. Let Ron help. Let the people who care about you stand with you. Harry looked at their joined hands, feeling something warm and unfamiliar in his chest. I promise, he said. And this time, he meant it. The Easter holidays ended, and the final term began. Harry could feel the confrontation approaching like a storm on the horizon. Quirrell's movements grew more frantic, his teaching more distracted. Snape's surveillance intensified. Dumbledore's twinkling gaze found Harry more and more often, weighing and measuring. The study group continued to meet, their training growing more intense. Harry pushed them harder, faster, preparing them for threats they couldn't yet name. Some students thrived under the pressure, others struggled. But all of them improved. You're different, Neville said one night after practice, as Harry helped him with his shield charm. Different from when the year started. How so? I don't know exactly. It's like, you're more focused. More certain. Neville shook his head. Is that strange? Maybe. Harry considered his answer. I think I've just stopped pretending. Stopped trying to be what everyone expects and started being what I need to be. And what's that? Harry looked at Neville, at the boy who could have been him, who carried his own scars and secrets and potential, and smiled. Ready. The final piece fell into place on a night in late April. Harry was patrolling the corridors with his cloak and map, as he did several nights a week. He'd learned to read the castle's rhythms, to know when something was wrong by the pattern of movement and stillness. Tonight, something was very wrong. Quirrell's dot was moving toward the third-floor corridor. But so was another dot, one labeled Severus Snape. And ahead of both of them, near the entrance to the forbidden corridor, a third dot waited. Albus Dumbledore. It was happening. Whatever test Dumbledore had arranged, whatever confrontation he'd been building toward, it was happening now. Harry ran. He reached the third-floor corridor just as Quirrell arrived, his turban askew and his eyes wild. Snape was moments behind, his wand drawn. And there, blocking the door that led to Fluffy's chamber, stood Dumbledore. "Good evening, Professor Quirrell," the headmaster said, his voice calm as still water. "Going somewhere?" Headmaster," Quirrell stammered. "I was just checking the defenses, I'm sure you were." Dumbledore's eyes moved past Quirrell, past Snape, and found Harry in the shadows. "All of you, I suspect, were checking the defenses." The silence stretched. Then Quirrell's face contorted, his voice dropping an octave as something else spoke through him. "You knew. All along, you knew." "I suspected." Dumbledore didn't move, but the air around him seemed to crackle with restrained power. "The possession was clumsy, Tom. Not your best work. Tom." The name hit Harry like a physical blow. Dumbledore knew. He'd known all along. "The stone is useless to you," Dumbledore continued. "Even if you could retrieve it, the ritual requires a willing vessel. And Quirinus is far too close to death to serve. There are other ways." Quirrell's face twisted into a smile that didn't belong to him. "Other vessels. The boy, for instance." Harry felt the weight of both their gazes turned toward him. Dumbledore's eyes were sharp with concern, Quirrell's, Voldemort's, burned with hungry interest. "Harry," Dumbledore said quietly. "Go back to your dormitory." "No." The word surprised everyone, including Harry himself. But now that it was spoken, he found he meant it. "This concerns me. Whatever's about to happen, it started with me, that night. I deserve to be here." "Harry, he's right, Dumbledore." Voldemort's voice was silk over steel. "The boy has a role to play. He always has. You know this better than anyone. And you know," Dumbledore said, his voice hardening, "that you cannot have him." "Can't I?" Quirrell moved, faster than a half-dead vessel should have been able to move, and fire erupted from his wand. Dumbledore's shield manifested without a visible spell, absorbing the attack. Snape lunged forward, his own magic joining the headmaster's. And Harry reached into his mind and found the prisoner waiting. "Do it," the soul fragment urged. "Show them what you are. End this." "Not yet. Not until I have to." But he drew his wand anyway, moving to flank Quirrell, ready to act if the opportunity presented itself. The battle was brief and brutal. Dumbledore and Snape working together were simply too powerful, Voldemort's weakened state and dying vessel couldn't compete. Within minutes, Quirrell was on his knees, his wand shattered, his body beginning to smoke as the possession burned through the last of his life force. "It's over, Tom," Dumbledore said. "Over?" The smile on Quirrell's face was ghastly. "It's never over. I have contingencies." His eyes found Harry. Something passed between them, recognition, hatred, and something else. Something almost like respect. "The boy knows. Ask him about the prison." Quirrell collapsed. The smoke rising from his body coalesced into a dark shape, a wraith, formless and shrieking, that swept toward Harry before anyone could react. Harry felt it hit his shields and bounce off. The wraith screamed in frustration, tried again, and again failed. The prisoner in Harry's head was laughing, a terrible, triumphant sound. You can't get in, Harry thought fiercely. There's no room. The wraith fled. Through the walls, through the castle, out into the night. Defeated but not destroyed. Gone but not forgotten. Silence fell. Dumbledore turned to Harry, his expression unreadable. It seems, Mr. Potter, that we have much to discuss. Harry met the old wizard's eyes without flinching. Yes, Headmaster. I believe we do. The conversation in Dumbledore's office lasted until dawn. Harry told him some of the truth. Not all of it, never all of it, but enough. The prisoner's existence. The years of mental warfare. The knowledge he'd extracted, the preparations he'd made, the certainty that Voldemort would return. Dumbledore listened without interruption, his expression growing more grave with each revelation. You've been carrying this alone, he said finally. Since you were 2 years old. I didn't have a choice. No. I suppose you didn't. Dumbledore sighed, suddenly looking every one of his 100+ years. I had suspected something was different about you, Harry. The occlumency barriers, the unusual knowledge, the way you watched the world with eyes too old for your face. But this. You don't believe me. On the contrary. I believe every word. Dumbledore's eyes met Harry's. What I don't understand is how you've survived. How you've kept the soul fragment contained. By all rights, it should have consumed you years ago. It tried. Harry's voice was flat. Every day, every night, it tries. But I built something stronger. A prison it can't break. Show me. It was a request, not a command. Harry considered refusing. His mental landscape was the one place that was truly his, truly private. But Dumbledore had information he needed. And trust had to start somewhere. He lowered his shields just enough, let Dumbledore's gentle legilimency touch the outer edges of his mind. The headmaster saw the fortress, the walls, the imprisoned soul. And in his eyes, Harry saw something unexpected. Awe. Extraordinary, Dumbledore whispered. Mr. Potter, you have accomplished something that the greatest occlumens in history would have thought impossible. To not only contain a Horcrux but to imprison it, to extract its knowledge, to turn the Dark Lord's own weapon against him. It was survive or die, Harry said. I chose survival. Indeed you did. Dumbledore leaned back in his chair. And now, Harry, we must decide what to do with this information. The Dark Lord has been driven off, but not destroyed. He will return, in some form, and when he does. I'll be ready. Will you? You're 11 years old, carrying a burden that would break most adults. You have allies, yes, but they don't know the full truth. And the enemy you face is ancient, powerful, and utterly ruthless. I know. Harry stood, feeling the exhaustion of the long night settling into his bones. But I also know something else. I know him. Better than anyone alive, maybe better than he knows himself. And that knowledge is a weapon. Dumbledore nodded slowly. Very well, Harry. I will not pretend to approve of everything you've done, the secrets, the manipulations, the burdens you've placed on yourself. But I recognize necessity when I see it. We are, it seems, fighting the same war. Does that make us allies? It makes us partners, after a fashion. Two generals on the same side, each with our own resources and strategies. Dumbledore's eyes twinkled faintly. I suspect we will not always agree on tactics. But I believe we share a common goal. Voldemort's destruction. More than that. Dumbledore's voice softened. The protection of those who cannot protect themselves. The preservation of what is good in this world. The hope that one day, children like you won't have to fight wars before they're old enough to understand what war means. Harry felt something shift in his chest, a weight he hadn't known he was carrying, easing just slightly. Then we're partners, he said. For now. For now, Dumbledore agreed. Now, I believe you have classes to attend and friends to reassure. The official story will be that Professor Quirrell suffered a magical illness and has been transferred to St. Mungo's. Only we three, you, Severus, and myself, will know the truth. And my friends? That decision is yours to make. But Harry, Dumbledore's expression grew serious. Be careful who you trust. Not everyone who claims to be an ally truly is. And not every enemy is obvious. I know. Harry moved toward the door, then paused. Headmaster. The prophecy. The one that linked me to Voldemort. Do you know it? I do. Will you tell me? Dumbledore was silent for a long moment. One day, he said finally. When you're ready. When we both are. It wasn't the answer Harry wanted. But it was enough. For now. He left the headmaster's office as the sun rose over Hogwarts, painting the ancient stones with gold and pink. The castle was waking up around him, students heading to breakfast, professors preparing for classes, house elves bustling through hidden passages. Normal life, continuing despite everything. That was risky, the prisoner observed. Telling the old man about me. He would have found out eventually. Better to control the revelation than let it surprise us. And now he has leverage over you. He knows your secret. He knows part of my secret. There's a difference. Harry made his way to Gryffindor Tower, his mind already planning the next steps. The year was ending, but the war was just beginning. He had allies to cultivate, knowledge to acquire, power to build. And somewhere out there, a wraith was fleeing into the darkness, defeated but not destroyed, planning its own next moves. The first battle was over. The war was just beginning. The last weeks of term passed in a blur of exams and farewells. Harry performed well on his tests, well enough to avoid suspicion, not so well as to attract unwanted attention. Hermione topped the class in almost everything, her determination undimmed by the mysteries still swirling around her best friend. Ron managed respectable marks through a combination of cramming and good luck. The study group met one final time before the summer. This isn't ending, Harry told them, standing in the candlelit classroom. We'll continue next year. Stronger, more prepared. What we've built here, this alliance, this trust, it matters. It will matter more in the years to come. What about over the summer? Susan Bones asked. How do we stay in contact? Carefully. Harry smiled slightly. I'll be in touch. And when we return in September, we'll pick up where we left off. Nods around the room. These students, his students, in a way, had grown over the year. They were still young, still learning, but they were no longer naive. They knew something was coming, even if they didn't know exactly what. That would have to be enough. The train ride home was quiet. Harry sat with Ron and Hermione, watching the Scottish landscape give way to English countryside. They talked about summer plans, about next year's classes, about everything except the things that mattered most. But just before they reached King's Cross, Hermione pulled Harry aside. I've been researching, she said quietly. All year. The things you know, the way you think, it's not normal, Harry. Not for anyone, let alone an 11-year-old. I know. And I think I've figured out part of it. Not all of it, but part. She met his eyes. Your scar. It's not just a scar, is it? There's something inside you. Something connected to Voldemort. Harry felt his breath catch. She was closer than he'd expected. Closer than anyone had ever gotten. Hermione, I'm not asking you to explain. Not now. She took his hand, her grip warm and fierce. But I want you to know that whatever it is, whatever you're carrying, it doesn't change who you are. You're still Harry. You're still my friend. And when you're ready to tell me everything, I'll be here." He looked at her, at this brilliant, brave, impossible girl who'd somehow seen through years of deception to the truth beneath, and felt something crack inside him. "Thank you," he whispered. "That means more than you know." The train pulled into the station. The platform was crowded with families, with laughter and tears and embraces. Harry gathered his things and stepped off, looking for the Dursleys' sour faces. But before he found them, a hand touched his shoulder. "Harry Potter." He turned. A woman stood there, middle-aged, nondescript, dressed in Muggle clothes that didn't quite fit right. "Who's asking?" "A friend." She pressed something into his hand, a folded piece of paper. "From someone who's been waiting a long time to contact you. Read it when you're alone." She melted into the crowd before Harry could respond. He looked down at the paper in his hand, at the writing visible through the folds. His heart stopped. "To Harry James Potter, from your godfather, Sirius Black." The letter had found its way back. And with it, the promise of answers Harry had been seeking all year. "Harry?" Ron's voice, calling from somewhere behind him. "You coming?" Harry pocketed the letter, forced his expression into neutrality, and turned toward the future. "Yeah. I'm coming." The first year was over. But the story was far from finished. Chapter 3 End. Chapter 4, First strikes the summer heat pressed against the windows of number 4, Privet Drive like a living thing, thick and relentless. Harry lay on his bed in Dudley's second bedroom, finally his after 11 years, staring at the ceiling and running calculations in his head. 3 weeks since term ended. 3 weeks of silence from the wizarding world, broken only by brief notes from Ron and Hermione and the occasional intelligence report from Daphne's network. 3 weeks of pretending to be a normal boy while his mind churned with plans and preparations. And 3 weeks since the letter from Sirius Black had turned everything he thought he knew upside down. "You're brooding again," the prisoner observed. "It's becoming tedious." "I'm processing." "There's a difference." Harry reached under his mattress and pulled out the letter, read so many times now that the creases were wearing thin. The handwriting was shaky, the words sometimes rambling, but the core message was clear. "I didn't betray your parents. I wasn't their secret keeper. Peter Pettigrew was, and Peter is the one who sold them to Voldemort. I've been in Azkaban for 10 years for a crime I didn't commit, and no one will listen because no one knows the truth. Except you, now. And I'm trusting you with this because you're James and Lily's son, and because the woman who delivered this letter tells me you're not what anyone expects. Find Peter. He's hiding somewhere, probably in animal form. He was an unregistered animagus, a rat. Find him, and you find the proof. Find the proof, and maybe, just maybe, I can finally be free." Your godfather, Sirius the prisoner, had been skeptical at first. Pettigrew was weak, pathetic. The idea that he could have orchestrated such a betrayal is exactly why it would work, Harry had countered. No one suspects the weak. That's what makes them dangerous. He'd spent the weeks since then researching, planning, reaching out through careful channels. The woman who delivered the letter, a former Auror named Hestia Jones, according to Daphne's sources, had been frustratingly difficult to contact again. But other avenues were opening. A knock on his door interrupted his thoughts. "Boy. Dinner." Aunt Petunia's voice was sharp as always, but there was something different in it now. Fear, maybe. After what had happened at the end of term, Harry returning with an air of barely contained power and a letter from Dumbledore warning the Dursleys to treat him appropriately, the family had been walking on eggshells. Harry pocketed the letter and headed downstairs. Dinner was a silent affair. Vernon glowered at his plate, eating mechanically. Petunia picked at her food, her eyes darting to Harry every few seconds. Dudley had retreated into sullen adolescence, speaking only to demand more potatoes. Harry ate without tasting, his mind elsewhere. You could make this easier on yourself, the prisoner suggested. A few demonstrations of power, and they'd never bother you again. Power isn't the issue. Control is. I need them afraid enough to leave me alone, not so afraid they do something stupid. A delicate balance. Everything is, when you're 11 and fighting a war no one else can see. After dinner, Harry retreated to his room and pulled out the Marauder's map. He'd been studying it obsessively since discovering its true nature, not just a surveillance tool, but a masterwork of enchantment that revealed things its creators might not have intended. Including the names of those creators. Moony. Wormtail. Padfoot. Prongs. Sirius's letter had confirmed what Harry suspected, these were nicknames for his father and his friends. Prongs was James Potter. Padfoot was Sirius Black. And Wormtail. Peter Pettigrew, the prisoner supplied. The rat. Harry traced his finger across the map's surface, thinking. If Pettigrew was alive, hiding in animal form, he could be anywhere. But if Harry's theory was correct, if Pettigrew was as weak and cowardly as Sirius described, he'd seek protection. Safety. A wizarding family who'd never suspect what he was. A family with connections to the old crowd. A family with a son Harry's age. A family with a pet rat. The Weasleys, Harry realized. Circumstantial, the prisoner warned. You're making assumptions. I'm making deductions. Ron's rat, Scabbers, has been in the family for years. Longer than a normal rat should live. And Ron mentioned once that Scabbers used to belong to his brother Percy, who would have been at Hogwarts when Pettigrew supposedly died. Still circumstantial. Then I'll need proof. Harry pulled out parchment and quill, composing a careful letter to Ron. Nothing suspicious, just friendly correspondence about summer plans, with a casual question about how Scabbers was doing. The kind of thing a normal friend would write. He sent it with Hedwig as the sun set, watching her disappear into the orange sky. You're playing a dangerous game, the prisoner observed. If Pettigrew is what you suspect, and if he realizes you're hunting him, then he'll run. And running rats leave trails. The reply came 3 days later. Ron's letter was cheerful and rambling, complaints about his brothers, excitement about possibly visiting Egypt if his father won a ministry prize, casual mention that Scabbers had been acting weird lately, hiding more than usual. Harry read between the lines and felt his suspicions harden into certainty. He knows something's wrong, Harry thought. Or he suspects. Either way, he's getting nervous. Which means you need to act before he bolts. The question was how. Harry couldn't exactly show up at the burrow and accuse the family pet of being a mass murderer. He needed proof, definitive, undeniable proof, and he needed it before Pettigrew realized the net was closing. He reached out to his network. Daphne's response came within a day. There are spells that can force an animagus to reveal their true form. Complex, requiring ministry approval for legal use. The Department of Magical Law Enforcement has access to them, as do certain private investigators. Susan Bones provided another angle. My aunt handles criminal cases sometimes. She's mentioned that unregistered animagi can be detected by certain wards, the kind that some of the old families have on their properties. And from an unexpected source, Neville Longbottom, came the most useful information of all. Gran has a contact in the Wisengamot. Someone who owes our family favors. If you need something investigated quietly, she might be able to help. Harry sat back, processing the options. He couldn't go through official channels, not without revealing how he knew what he knew. But an unofficial investigation, carried out by people with the right resources and the right motivations. You're going to need to tell someone the truth, the prisoner said. At least part of it. I know. Harry composed another letter, this one to Augusta Longbottom, Neville's formidable grandmother. He'd never met her, but Neville's descriptions painted a picture of a woman who valued strength, directness, and above all, justice. Dear Madam Longbottom, forgive the presumption of writing to you directly, but I've become aware of information that may be relevant to a grave miscarriage of justice.